What's up, folks? Hello. Check.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Rub-a-dub-dub 4 months with rib in the tub. Only 20 months more of sub until I get the golden suds.
Brian, thank you. Thank you for the 4 months. Tier 1. Very eloquent. You put it very eloquently as well. That. Thank you again, Brian, for the 4 months Tier 1. Thanks also to Cool J for the 11 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Jay. 1 more month until the 1 year.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
2 years of hot, golden clout trickling down upon me.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
How was vacation?
Thank you, Moss, as well, for the 24-month resub at Tier 1. Congratulations to you, Moss, for the golden, highly elite, highly exclusive, golden TRRS 24-month sub badge. Not going to engage with your comment in any other way than that, other than to say congratulations. Thanks to Sikalufakis as well for the 15 months of Prime. Thank you to Sikalufakis. My vacation was nice. My vacation was very nice. Thank you for asking. It was nice. As I mentioned, I was in upstate New York a couple days, going swimming and doing other activities with my son. The clout does trickle down. I mean, that's true. That is true. It does. There is no getting around that. I think when you're describing it so vividly, it kind of sounds like something else. Are you dealing with Avatar not winning Best Picture? If you need to end the stream early, we understand. It's okay. I mean, listen, as I predicted on the Insurgents podcast last week that we did, I assumed that Avatar was not going to win Best Picture. We all know that whether I think that that's fair, whether I think it's good. And I imagined Everything Everywhere All at Once was going to win. Or as I like to call it, That Just Happened All at Once. That could have been an alternative title to that one. Is the Everything Everywhere All at Once is behind me, isn't it? Would be another way of describing that one. Money Talks, Bullshit Awards, Walks. Thank you, Marty. No, as I said, I didn't hate Everything Everywhere. You have to admit, even if you like this movie, you have to admit that it has become overrated now. It was totally fine, totally enjoyable. In fact, I really liked the performances in it. And Michelle Yeoh, Michelle Yeoh, I thought was totally deserving to win the Best Actress award in that. Has had a long, distinguished career as well, acting in a number of great films, including getting started in these amazing Hong Kong action films, Crouching Tiger, etc. And she was great in this movie. I thought that was a totally fine choice. When you get into the best screenplay, best directing, best picture territory, and it's sweeping all these major awards, that I think maybe it's a little bit much. That I gotta say, I think that's probably a little bit much. And you have to admit, even if you like this movie, was it the absolute best picture far and away to that extent? I don't really agree with that, frankly. Maybe some people do. Maybe some people do agree with it. Couldn't be me, personally, but that's all. Maybe that's a little bit, maybe winning every single major award was a little bit much for what was a fun science fiction movie with a family emotional core, Nothing wrong with that. Is it far and away the absolute best film made last year? I don't know. Shouldn't Avatar be under animated feature? You could make that case, Carrier Wave, although there is live action in it, though, so I don't think there can be live action in a animated film, right? There are human actors in the movie, even though most of the film is animated, all the backgrounds and a lot of the characters. Fun science fiction movie with family emotional core. Wait, that's Avatar? I suppose, although personally, in my opinion, had deeper themes that I connect to even more, themes of anti-imperialism and a critique of settler colonialism, an explicit request of its audience that it supports the violent destruction of the US-based military capitalist machine. Frankly, I think that's maybe sets it in a bit of a different category. More epic in scope as well. Just too subversive for the Academy. That's right. That's right. I enjoyed Banshees of Inisherin as well. I thought that should have gotten some more love from the Academy as well, possibly in the screenplay category. Colin Farrell as well, I thought was great in that. I could have seen a Best Directing award for that as well. Over everything, everywhere. I don't know. Overall, so does it sound like I'm upset by what happened? Of course not. I'm totally okay. I'm totally fine with everything that transpired. I don't care. It should be a night of celebrating all the good movies. Maybe we don't need to give every single award to the one movie, which again was totally fine. Totally fine, totally enjoyable. Do not put in the newspaper that I got mad. Do not tell the internet that I'm mad, please. That is not accurate. Big Navalny guy, that's right. Stop trying to make Navalny happen, please. Yeah, I really liked Amazing Bird Show. I really liked the performances a lot.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Lennon Smash. Brian, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Brian correctly recognizing that I'm not angry about anything that's been going on, and rewarding me for my calm demeanor. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I actually didn't see Tar. I would still like to see that one. Got some noodles here, just getting those stirred up. Getting those bad boys stirred up. Looking forward to eating those. Anyways, those are my mildly spicy takes about the Oscars. Okay. The Navalny stuff was hilarious and highlights again just how captured Hollywood is by state propaganda. Well, that's the thing. It's like they didn't specifically bring on Zelensky to appeal to the Americans for more arms, but that was the makeup, though. We still got to give NATO a little special award too. So that was the Navalny thing. And didn't they refer to him as the leader of the opposition? Like in there, I actually missed the actual segment that it was on, but didn't they refer to him as the leader of the opposition? Which is not true. I mean, there's no truth to that whatsoever. So, I mean, I guess you can just go, I guess it is Hollywood. Hollyweird, more like. You can just get up there and say anything at all. Guess what? I'm the leader of the Canadian opposition. What about that? I'm the leader of the Canadian opposition, the government in exile. I have just as much legitimacy. Pretty much. I have just as much of a claim as Navalny and Guaido. I'm here to disrespect Navalny and EEAAO, and I'm all out of disrespecting Navalny. I'm glad you're in the Everything Everywhere hater squad, Kleppy. I'm glad to hear that. Again, I was totally mild take on this. I wasn't even a hater. A lot of it I enjoyed. I just said, though, that my blistering take on this was like, I don't know if it needed to win every single major award. Like, yes, actor and supporting actress, or supporting actor and actress, totally deserved. Editing, the editing was like fantastic, sure. But like best screenplay, director, best picture, come on now. Folks, come on. Like I was saying, even if you enjoy the film, I think you have to admit that that's maybe like pushing it a little bit too far. You know? That's maybe a bit much. Winning every single major award. I think we can all agree that random butt plugs and googly eyes are very funny. That's right.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I've got the Oscar fever. Hope you've got it too. Pour me some bubbly now. It's all you've got to do.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for the 17 months tier 1. I really appreciate it. I wish we could have some bubbly. Oh, the hot dog fingers. Oh, it's so random. Oh, the googly eyes. Oh, do you remember that part with The Rock? Yeah. Really, really boundary pushing stuff there. Yeah, if your movie has a multiverse, then it can't win Best Picture. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair analysis. Reddit the movie. That's right. If I wanted to see random quirky content, I would simply browse r/all. That's right. Oh, look, it's Ratatouille, but real. Rick and Morty is a fair critique, but still liked. Well, that's the thing. I didn't hate it at all. It was totally enjoyable. Totally enjoyable flick. Maybe we can tone it down a little bit. Maybe we can tone it down a tiny little bit when it comes to sweeping every single major award at the Academy Awards. Maybe that's taking it a bit far in my opinion. In my opinion. Just got here to say I love the shirt that Rob is wearing. Well, if you want to purchase this shirt, you can do so. This amazing shirt designed by community member Old Dutch. There was a merch sale going on. I don't know if it's still going on, but that's where you can purchase the merch. You can hold out on buying for the next sale if you want to wait, because there's often sales, but that's where you get it. Yeah, all the All Quiet on Western Front stuff. Also, like the sound design, the score. I don't know. I haven't seen it though. I'm just gonna eat some noodles here while we chat about this. I've become like very addicted to these. These are so good. These little Shin ramen soup bowls. It's nice and spicy. Really good stuff. I got the egg in there as well. Just really, really solid lunch. I'm just going to be over here eating my noodles. Encino Man 2 will sweep the Oscars. I loved Encino Man growing up. As we've talked about wheezing the juice. You all know that I'm a proponent of juice wheezing, the juice. You all know this about me. Was nice to see Brendan Fraser get an award. I haven't seen The Whale. I do like Darren Aronofsky a lot. I've seen a lot of people criticize The Whale, I think in ways that made sense to me. A juice wheeze enthusiast. People thought it was maybe kind of exploitative in many ways. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I was happy to see Brendan Fraser win that award, though. You know, it's nice for a guy that's been around for so long and to get that kind of recognition. I don't know. if you're edged because I'm wheezing all your grindage, just chill. Because if I had the whole Brady Bunch thing happen at my pad, I'll go grind over there so don't tax my gig so hardcore cruster. I'm often saying that. Everyone knows this about me, that I'm often saying exactly that. I saw Elvis yesterday, and I'm pumped to see Austin Butler in Dune Part 2. Did they cast him as Fade? That's interesting. I would like to see Elvis. I haven't seen it yet. But did they cast Austin Butler as Fade Rautha? Oh boy, that's cool. That's interesting. Looking forward to that for sure. From Elvis to Sting, that's right. My prediction of the day is liberals are going to start pushing the China COVID lab theory bullshit. I mean, it's already kind of started, so I mean, I think you're right that it's not far away from on the horizon. We'll get to all that though. We'll get to all that. I don't want to get too serious before I finish my noodles here. I want to finish my noodles and then we can get serious with the discourse. These are the casual noodles. Thank you, Brian. Very good. Very good. I don't know. You're like, Kleppy, you're saying you're against the Tom Hanks scenes or like the he's what? But that was the scene that I saw being shared online and I was like, okay, there's something to this movie. I think I got to see this now. This seems like it's approaching kind of like interestingly camp, which is always fun. He's what? Anti-Baz Luhrmann. I rewatched his Romeo and Juliet adaptation with Claire Danes and Leo DiCaprio the other day, and fucking I think it's great. Really visually interesting, great performances, great cast. I kind of want to see it more not knowing it's camp and it literally turned Austin Butler Southern. I like movies where you can walk away from it saying, it seems like the actors had fun. It seemed like one of those movies. Yeah, I agree with that, Marty. Like Tom Hanks was not like, I'm going to go phone this in. I'm going to do something interesting here. I like that. One thing though, just one of my immediate takeaways though is like Austin Butler. I don't think he's like beautiful enough. I don't think you put young Elvis together with Austin Butler and he seems like a handsome fella, but to me it's just like it's not quite getting to that level of like ethereal, like, you know, beauty that young Elvis embodied, that inspired this kind of like frenzy. You know, not doing it for me. Do you know what I mean? Am I crazy with that? I don't know. I would still like to see it. I still really want to see it. I think Elvis was only okay too. I think the appeal with Elvis was that he was like invented the hip thrust in U.S. popular culture. It's funny to think of how like, you know, scandalous Elvis was in retrospect. And like the moral panics that have always been kind of gripping America, which are still ongoing to this day. Not to Songwriters Acceptance is a highlight of the awards. I enjoyed that a lot, and that was a really well-deserved win as well. The Kei Kwan speech, that was fun too. You know, I don't want to just be a hater. It's great to see someone. That's a great story. That's a great kind of like redemptive story, like fun like journey to watch an actor go on from his youth to today. I think that's wonderful. I was happy that he won that award. Just offhand about performances, I rewatched the Dark Knight trilogy over the last month, specifically due to conversations on this show, and there's a few scenes where Bruce goes back to working at Wayne Enterprises, and he handles his American Psycho character, which is neat. I do like Christian Bale as, because there's two Bruce Waynes in those movies, right? There's Bruce Wayne like when he's talking to Alfred, and there's like public Bruce Wayne, and I do think it was fun how he made a point to like make Bruce Wayne into someone that you would see and be like, there's no fucking way this guy's a superhero. This guy's just like a rich asshole. This man doesn't care about anything at all. Of course he's not Batman. You know? Because like the whole thing about Batman, it's kind of clear who it is. When he's like this big weapons contractor who has the resources for all this stuff. You see the comparison and how they look. But like you'd see Bruce Wayne taking a dip in the hotel pool and stuff, absconding with the whole ballet troupe. It's just like, this guy is not Batman. There's no way. There's no fucking way. Just like Elon. It would be funny if Elon really was like some kind of this was all just like a persona to throw us off his trail. I don't think that's true, though. I don't think that's true. Oh, the broth is really good. It's so spicy. Very satisfying. I haven't seen The Lighthouse. I do really like Pattinson as well, though. Again, I love, like we were just talking about, I love when actors actually act. You know, I didn't really like Tenet that much, but I like Pattinson showing up and doing like a weird accent and kind of a weird, quirky character. You know? He seems someone that's like actually takes his job seriously. Interesting. Both him and Kristen Stewart, I think, are you could describe that way. That was really good casting in those Twilight movies. That's why Nicolas Cage is objectively the greatest modern actor of all time. I think you could make that case for sure. Although Cage does, I think really great actors have to say no sometimes as well. And Cage, especially, I think because he's had financial troubles, has just said yes to everything for the last, like, several years. He's in a lot of crap, and he's always entertaining in the crap, but I think that lowers his score, personally. And this is just like this is like a weird personal stance that I have.
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Closer and closer towards the P badge. I can't wait.
Starlight, thank you very much for the 21 months, tier 1. You are very close to the golden badge. That's right, the 24-month elite exclusive golden badge. Congratulations to you. This is indeed where you sign up for the Friendship Triangle. That is correct. And it's not a cult, and it's not a pyramid scheme, nor is it
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
1 month till showered in the poo hiss badge.
The poo hiss. Jesus. These are the kind of messages that we're getting.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
A lot of people asking questions that my "this is not a cult" t-shirt already answers.
Thank you, B-Rat. That's right. It clearly says. It clearly says both in the warning at the bottom of the screen right now and on the t-shirts that it is not a cult. Thank you, B-Rat, for the 17 months tier 1. And thank you, John, for the 23 months tier 2 and for everything you do for the community. Very close to the elite exclusive golden badge. Oh, that was very good. Very good stuff. Oh, what if there was a universe where they had crocodile heads and their hands were actually flippers? What about that? Oh, wow. Hey, oh, what about a universe where everything was underwater? And when you went swimming, you would get out of the water and you'd get dry. Oh, my goodness. Someone give me an award. I can do this too. I can do this too. We can do this all day. How do I motivate myself to get back to work instead of taking a nap with Twitch on in the background? I think you've come to the wrong place. Cows. You've come to the wrong place for this kind of advice. What about a world in which you can transfer your body into a tall blue person? That sounds fantastic. And you use that enhanced body to destroy the mighty American-led imperialist machine that runs on genocide and violence? I agree. That would be fantastic if someone were to make such a film. What about a universe where there is always sound playing? Blah, 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 and then when you want to listen to music, you put in headphones and it's silent. What about that? Whoa. Oh my goodness. What about a universe where everything is bright except the sun, and the sun makes things dark? Holy shit. Holy shit, B-Rat. Give this person an award right away. We're just having a little fun here. That's all. We're just having a little fun. We're just having a little fun. You saw me tick back the noodles for the 3 times. I think because I was getting the broth first, and then I was getting the final actual the noodles and vegetables that are in there and stuff. That was what I was going back for. Those are very good. I still haven't seen Tar. I would really like to, though, because I've heard a lot of good things about it. Just warning, no blue people in Tar. I don't need blue people to enjoy films. I'm simply saying that I did enjoy the film that prominently featured blue people in it. Okay, that's all. It's not an essential component for me. It's not an essential component for me to enjoy a property, a creative property. I like many films that don't feature blue people. I've seen dozens of films that do not feature anyone that is blue. In fact, the film Prometheus, that does feature large blue people as well, I don't like that film. And having large blue people in that film is not something that makes me enjoy it in any way. So it's not like just throwing blue people in your movie means that I'm going to like it. Anyway. Did you enjoy the movie Blue Valentine? I don't think I've seen Blue Valentine. I've seen Blue Velvet. I do enjoy that one. That's a classic. Blue Oyster Cult. Now we're just naming things that have blue in them, aren't we? Is that what we're doing now? We're just naming things that have the word blue in them. This is what it's come to over here. Good. Very good. Laura Dern is very good in that, as is Dennis Hopper. Classic Dennis Hopper performance in there. Leo DiCaprio was blue at the end of Titanic. Did you like that? That was always the one. I've only seen Titanic once. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I've never seen it again. And I always kind of like had a weird thing against it because, like, I don't know. It's like it always struck me as a James Cameron guy who loved Terminator 2 and Aliens in these movies. It always felt like I was a teenager and it's like, oh, it's like romance. Blah, blah. And it was so popular as well. So I've just never returned to it. Although I think it's probably worth returning to just because of it was an incredible, just in terms of a filmmaking accomplishment, is also pretty an amazing accomplishment as well. With the sets and the effects and all that stuff. Any opinions on the pro wrestler, the Blue Meanie? He's fine. I don't know. I was never a big Blue Meanie fan. I was never a big ECW guy. Remember, people saw Titanic in theaters like 5 times. What the fuck? Yeah, I mean, I think I had a bit of like a contrarian thing with Titanic where it's like, oh, everyone loves this movie, so I don't like it. But I do think that it's probably worth revisiting just because of Cameron's... I mean, he did knock it out of the park. You can't really deny that. And it was actually interesting in Avatar: Way of Water in the finale, seeing little bits of Titanic in the finale. I loved the whole ending of the film. The whole last 45 minutes are they're like a tour through James Cameron's brain. It's like a James Cameron museum of all his greatest hits. The last 45 minutes or so of the movie. The Abyss as well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the underwater sections. A perfectly executed bad movie. I'd probably like to rewatch it. Even though I'm never going to watch Avatar, I'm joining the Avatar caucus. Well, we're happy to have you on board, Sin Chow. I do think you should watch it. And I do think we should watch Avatar Way of Water as a community, which is going to be possible soon. It's coming out in like 2 weeks for legal streaming, and we can all legally stream it and then text with each other while it's on. Do you ever watch the theatrical cut of Avatar or only the extended version? I think the one I normally watch is the theatrical. I don't even think I've seen the extended version that has the scenes on Earth and stuff. I like the message of the stream. Vote blue no matter who. And Blue Lives Matter. Those are the two main takeaways that you should have. Those are the two main takeaways from this program. Oh boy, folks. Well, this has been Movie Corner. How do you think I look today? I got some more lighting. I had my lighting coming from here. I added a ring light over here as well, on this side. I think the lighting is going to improve the situation a little bit. I also washed my hair for the first time today in like a long time. I don't even remember the last time I washed my hair was. Like with shampoo and conditioner. We all know that I'm kind of I'm on the no shampoo squad. I did go swimming a lot over the last week in like chlorine pools and stuff, and I just felt like my hair needed like an actual wash. You got a key light and a fill light. Best cinematography right there. I'm getting there. I am getting there. Looks nice. Can I suggest to everyone cleaning yourself early and often? And I do that, just to be clear. Daily washer here. All the parts. That's not in dispute. I simply don't, it seems, I just don't use shampoo. That's all. Anyway, we're going to have to get to our main topic of discourse soon. What I got about 2 hours here. Shampoo for my real friends and real poo for my sham friends. There we go. Big proponent of cleaning myself. Very much same. Very much same. Like a gentle shampoo 3 times a week, but I'm doing a body scrub every single day. Yeah, I do the body scrub daily. But I hadn't put shampoo in my hair in like months prior to today. And you know what? Guess what, folks? My hair was fine. It got a little damaged over the week because of the chlorine pool. If it hadn't been for that, though, my hair was totally fine. Not greasy. The whole thing is a scam. We don't need to get into this whole thing, honestly, even though I brought it up. I know I brought it up. We don't need to get into the whole discourse about this. The scam. The scam poo. I don't shampoo my hair either. I'm also balding, though. That is one thing that I'm not. That is one thing that I am not. My decaying meat prison is falling apart in a number of different ways. That is one area where I seem to be doing okay, though. I'm just not like I can barely grow anything here. I still can't grow a beard. The irony of me is that, like, I'm getting gray hairs here, and I can't even grow a beard. So the beard that I can grow, which is nowhere near to being an actual beard, is now turning gray. That's what I'm dealing with over here. But as a side effect of not really having any much body hair to speak of or anything here, I get to keep it up there. I don't know. I guess that's the trade-off. Okay, wow. So we're getting... There's now a poll. There's now a poll in the chat about how I wash my legs. I'm seeing some disappointing results here, frankly. I'm seeing some disappointing results in the poll. You people don't think much of me, do you? Thank you, Kleppy. I don't just let the soap trickle, okay? I know I should wait till the poll being finished. In fact, I'm going to vote in the poll. Okay, now it's getting very specific. These side questions here. Jeez. Only the clout trickles down. Everything else is scrubbed in fiercely with steel wool. That's right. If you're not taking off the first couple of layers of skin so that you're bleeding and in agony afterwards, and you're not doing it right, as far as I'm concerned. Rob lives in a universe where the soap trickles up from his legs, hence the lack of need for shampoo. Oh, my goodness. That's so wacky. Ooh. What about if you were wet all the time and then when you took a shower it was dry? How about that? What do you think about that? You were just wet, you were just moist all the time, and then when you took a shower, you were dry for those few moments. That would be a kind of a wacky universe, right? You get out of the shower and you say, that just happened. What if your mate was a TV? A world where apple is a color and a food, and an orange is just a fruit. There we go. Now we're talking. The shower's right behind me now, isn't it? Should one use body wash or shampoo on hairy armpits? Well, first, I'm not sure that there's really any difference. I'm not even convinced that there is. I think everything below the neck, though, is body wash, no matter what the body hair level is. That would be my stance on that. Should we talk about like serious shit soon? Should we talk about the economy? Have we had enough of this tomfoolery now? We got almost an hour here. We've gone almost an hour without referencing any of the important things we wanted to talk about.
Let's just do a straight
Let me
interview.
just check something here. I posted a TikTok right before we did this. Okay. It got a couple views. Not really anything to write home about. My quest to become a TikTok sensation continues. A universe in which the rate of profit tends to rise. Oh my. Oh my goodness. Let's do that. Okay, I'm just going to go blow my nose. Not that you need that for like specific information. How about China brokering around Saudi talks? I want to talk about that as well. Let me just go for 3 seconds here. I'll come back and I'll get ready to talk about serious business. Okay? Don't go anywhere.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Yes, let's talk about serious stuff. Like Xi showcasing his political power with 2 teacups.
The difference between China's leader, Xi Jinping, and everyone else. He's got 2 teacups, and all the others have 1. It might seem like a minor detail, but in elite Chinese politics, symbolism matters. Chinese emperors used to be the only ones allowed to wear yellow robes. So even little things like having 2 cups set Xi Jinping apart. The 2 cups thing actually started back in 2021, but everyone thought it was just a COVID thing. Sometimes Xi Jinping...
Have I been fucking... Thank you for the 200 friend coin, Dimitri, and thanks for sharing this. This is just so stupid. Like, perhaps this guy's just thirsty. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's just thirsty. Maybe he just really likes tea. Have you ever thought about that? I don't know. Maybe that's all it is, though. Have you ever considered that one?
Like having 2 cups set Xi Jinping apart. The 2 cups thing actually started back in 2021, but everyone thought it was just a COVID thing. Sometimes Xi Jinping's power is more overt, like at a big Communist Party meeting last October when his predecessor, Hu Jintao, was practically dragged
I remember
away.
this. Not Hu Jintao. Oh, no. All these people that all of a sudden had to pretend to know who Hu Jintao was. All of a sudden, this is the biggest, scariest thing. Oh no. Hu Jintao, this is terrifying. Terrifying.
I don't know the backstory to that one. Since then, she's withstood rare COVID street protests.
CJP!
And he's still been powerful enough this week to push through major government reforms, all while showing in the smallest ways that he's in total control. Or maybe he's just really thirsty.
I think that's probably more like what it is, lady. And honestly, I probably would just... I think we should take a moment to send a heartfelt congratulations from the TRRS community to President Xi Jinping of China. Congratulations on the third term. I know I'm very excited about the seeing what comes out of this new group that has been assembled to run China in this term. Heartfelt congratulations from me, Rob Rousseau, and from all the community to Xi Jinping on the third term. Love that for him. Historic accomplishment. Historic. First ever. Yeah, and the new defense minister who's been targeted by sanctions by the US. We love it. Congratulate. You have all the tea you want. You've earned it. Sometimes I order an entire pot of green tea simply to express my dominance. And that is your right. Congratulations on all the many beverages. Nothing but respect for my president. Exactly. Exactly. So I wonder if there must be some kind of like video explainer about this Silicon Valley Bank situation. Does anyone have any suggestions for videos or anyone that's put together some kind of...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all
there's
this.
The mainstream news versions of it. The Silicon Valley Bank collapsing. I guess we can just watch the clips that have been compiled on CBC and elsewhere about that.
Silicon Valley Bank.
This one, Genghis Han has something good. And I think you tried to just get me now, Genghis. You tried to get me in some kind of a, not a Rickroll, but some kind of a troll situation. And thankfully I was quick enough to avoid being humiliated. Gotta get up a lot earlier in the morning to catch me. Okay? Nice try, sir. I also have 2 beverages, an iced coffee and an iced tea. That sounds wonderful. Very sinister. That's right. Has there been attempts to rush a Scary-nomics this week? Well, I should talk to Red Scary about it. We are talking to the Deprogram boys on Wednesday. Remember. Wednesday. The Deprogram squad joining the program. Hopefully, I will get Brian Becker this week as well. I'm going to still try and make that happen as well. So we're going to have a busy week over here. Anyway, let's watch this clip about the situation with the Silicon Valley Bank. And I think there's many things that we can learn about how our economy works depending on how, the government is responding to this. How all these tech libertarian guys are now begging daddy government to get involved and rescue them, and people leaping to the defense of these institutions. Tells us a lot about the way our economy functions. Is this going to spread to other banks. Is this the next step in the collapsing house of cards of the entire United States economic system? We don't really know. We don't really know. Well, let's take a look at what the media is saying about it. This is CBC, and we can look at a few more clips of what is happening before we get into this.
Silicon Valley Bank's collapse set off a panic not seen since the days of the financial meltdown of 2008, triggering urgent calls for calm and extraordinary action.
The American banking system is really safe and well capitalized. It's resilient.
To limit the damage, federal officials announced customers who deposited money will be made whole. They will have access to their bank accounts as of Monday. The money will be repaid through a special assessment on banks, not by taxpayers. The Treasury Secretary hinted as much before specifics were announced.
We are concerned about depositors and are focused on trying to meet their needs.
Thousands of small and medium-sized tech sector companies, the majority of SVB's customers, stood to lose billions of dollars in deposits when the bank failed on Friday.
These are climate startups. These are startups that are helping cure cancer. Yeah. And they're employing Americans across the country. And they didn't take risks. They just had their money in a bank.
The failure caused...
That's something I would like to respond to, and we're going to get into more of this as well. But that's what a lot of when you people criticize the reaction on the part of the federal government right now to make sure that everyone is being rescued out of this situation, and people point to, but you can't. You're cheering for this to collapse. There's all kinds of people, regular people, that have their money tied up in this. They weren't taking any risks, and if that's your takeaway when this stuff happens, so of course we got to rescue these banks. Of course, we do have to ensure that all these deposits are going to be honored, whether the bank has money or not. The government has to step in. Aren't we just kind of discovering, though, the ways that average everyday people are basically being held hostage by the extremely wealthy and powerful, so they can engage in this gambling, this completely risk-free gambling with everyone else's funds? Isn't that more what's going on? Aren't they just holding everyone else hostage? So these incredibly wealthy interests can take everyone else's money and play these fucking games with it with zero consequences. And they know now that there's nothing they can ever do where there's going to be consequences, right? If they didn't learn that in 2008, they're learning it all over again right now. There is no level of risk that we can play around with that we know, even if our risky investments go south, the government is going to come in and make us whole again, and we're going to be able to make the case that it's because we need to save all these average working people that put their money into the institution. But aren't we just talking about how these people are being held hostage? Again, bailouts incentivizes more of this kind of behavior, for sure. Yeah, and just the average regular person with over $250K in the bank. That's another part of that as well.
Massive uncertainty in the markets, with billions of dollars lost, including a huge hit for Canadian banking stocks. It also led to pleas for the government to step in amid fears employers who bank with SVB would not be able to pay workers.
No one wants to miss a paycheck,
right.
And there are millions of employees with paychecks at stake next week.
And fears inaction would lead to a run on more smaller regional banks.
If people get nervous, they may start taking their money out of those banks and putting it into the large money center banks. We don't want further consolidation.
And Katie, federal regulators and officials are also putting in similar measures for a second bank.
Yeah, it's called Signature Bank, Ian, and it's a major player in the world of cryptocurrency. Authorities are doing what they can to ensure there is confidence in the banking system and confidence in markets. President Joe Biden will speak about this on Monday, but he put out a statement today saying that the people responsible for this mess will be held accountable. And he called for strengthening oversight and regulation of larger banks so that this doesn't happen again. He hopes he'll be able to calm fears, and in the meantime, federal officials are looking closely for any early signs of stability. Ian.
I'm sure they're going to get right on that. It probably says nothing good, right? The fact that when this shit does start to happen, because listen, if this, we've been speculating on the possible like collapse of our economic system for a while now, our housing market, this massive tech bubble, which is kind of what this is in reference to. We've all been kind of waiting for this house of cards to come down for a while now. Really since the beginning of the pandemic when it looked like it was happening, and then they pumped trillions of dollars into the market just to kind of keep it afloat. We have this zombie economy though, really since 2008. Nothing from the actual Great Recession has really been addressed. All the same people are still engaging in the same behaviors. There was those few minor reforms like Dodd-Frank, a lot of which has been rolled back at this time. So we have this zombie economy that's going on. It's felt like every other day, when is the other shoe going to drop on this, right? And it's impossible not to, whether you're talking about this situation, whether you're talking about the ongoing collapse of Tesla, which has rebounded a bit lately as well, or crypto or whatever. Don't you feel this like sense of like excitement by it? You do, don't you? And it's probably a good sign, right? The fact that because for sure, if there is another massive economic collapse, we're all average people will be absolutely affected by it. I'm sure it will be a massive calamity. I'm sure it will lead to another massive upward of transfer of wealth to the rich. But even knowing that average people or even you yourself is going to be affected by it, don't you have this kind of sick sense of yes, when it starts to happen? That's really a good sign, right? Psychologically, we're all doing well because we just want to see these people fail, right? Even if you lose them yourself. My whole life is tied up in tech companies. I get paid through Twitch. Who knows if the Silicon Valley bubble does burst, if this is the first sign of that, it will probably hugely impact me in the worse, in the negative. At the same time, though, when you feel this the possibility of this kind of massive collapse happening, and it feels again a little bit like we're in the early stages of that. Who knows whether they'll be able to stop it or not. It's impossible not to have this sick sense of excitement. Yes. Come on, crash. So that's probably a sign that we're all very psychologically healthy. The fact that even though it will be a calamity, we're all kind of sickly excited to see this thing kind of just finally collapse in on itself. We're all the sickos. That's right. We're all being sickos about this. It's really impossible not to. I'd like them to crash if they didn't get bailed out. There's not even anything to nationalize. It's all imaginary. Well, that's the thing. And it would be nice if maybe that's what it resulted in. If it resulted in a wave of nationalization, if it resulted in a wave of people demanding that we have a fairer income, which of course never happens. It's because we have no power to stop it or change it. All we can do is shade in front. I mean, that's exactly true as well. That is true as well. We are absolutely in sicko mode right now. Let's see what else we got here. The plain bagel. I don't know about the plain bagel, if that's going to be interesting or not. And they're saying no losses by the taxpayers. And they always say that, don't they? Don't worry, it's not the taxpayers that are bailing out. It's not the taxpayers that are bailing anybody out.
That the Fed is spending? It's not tax money. The banks have accounts with the Fed, much the same way that you have an account in a commercial bank. So to lend to a bank, we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed.
There we go.
So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account. You see? It's not taxes, don't worry. All politics is down to seeing your adversary harmed. And that's this is what I wanted to point out in this.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
DJ Chimp, thank you for the 100 friend coin. Thank you for marking up the size of my account. Thank you, DJ Chimp. That's why I wanted to talk about like this like economics 101 idea, right? When it comes to this kind of stuff. I think this is important to talk about this distinction. Because of course, you know, CERB, the child tax credit, unemployment, food stamps, welfare, a higher minimum wage, all of these things, even though all of these things just deliver money to the people that actually need it the most, who then take that money and go out into their community and spend the money. That's actually, according to the people that decide what constitutes a good economy or a bad economy, according to them, the economics 101 knowers, that is actually bad for the economy to do that. You can't do it. When you give like working class people money to buy groceries or pay rent or pay their credit card debt or take a fucking vacation, that's bad for the economy. It causes inflation. Okay? It causes the economy to overheat, right? That's what they say. No. When you give working people money and they spend it on all these things in their communities, it causes the economy to overheat, you see. And then, you know, that leads to inflation. It leads to all these other problems. So you can't do that. But in these moments, though, when there's rich people that have made risky investments in industries that they have specifically lobbied to deregulate, well, then it's really important to do that. And in fact, bailing out those rich people so that money can go in their little bank account and can go back into be reinvested, and it can go right back into the little spreadsheet where it's not spent on anything and it just sits there accomplishing nothing. That is actually good for the economy to do that. That saves the economy and it does not cause inflation. This is like the economics 101 viewpoint. These are the people that control our economy and the people that go on TV shows to lecture us about this kind of stuff. This is how they view these things. It just overinflates like a weather balloon. That's right. Yeah, it is spent on something. Stock buybacks. That's true. Yeah. And like yachts and stuff and private islands. I guess that's true. But it's funny how that works, isn't it? When you give the money to people who need it, that's bad for the economy. It destroys the economy. It overheats the economy. It causes inflation. When you bail out the absolute wealthiest people, the financial crisis was a perfect example of that. You know, all the banks got bailed out and all the risky behavior they were engaging in, all the illegal, fraudulent behavior they were engaging in, no consequences for that whatsoever. But all the people that got to purchase homes, that were living in a home sometimes for the first time in their lives, they all lost those homes and no one was there to take care of them. No one was there to be like, we're going to make sure you stay in your home. They just lost. And that's all. And it's now been a decade or more since that time of these like low interest rates. And this is a time that like could have gone into building infrastructure and giving people health care and giving people housing. And instead it's gone into funding these fucking wacky Silicon Valley tech schemes and gone to these absolute hucksters and frauds and con men like Elon Musk. It's been 15 years. That's right. It's been fucking a long time. Yeah, it's for sure it's the same people. Absolutely. All the same people engaging in all the exact same behavior. Let's take a look at some more of the news coverage of this.
Silicon Valley.
Here's Fox Business 4 hours
Well,
ago.
it was a weekend of worry.
And this is the question. This is, as always, when it comes to these things, this is the lens that I'm looking at this through. Is it happening? That's the question. Is it happening again? And yes, absolutely. There's a sick part of me that indeed wants it to happen. I'm ready, right? Look, if the other shoe is going to drop eventually, let's just have it. You know what I mean? Even if we're gonna lose too, of course we will. I don't think there should be any illusions about that. But if the other shoe is going to drop, let's just fucking do it. Let's just get this out of the way. That's kind of my stance on this. So here's the warning, though. And so we'll see if they've been able to stave this off or if this is going to escalate. And if we are in the early stages of the financial collapse that we've all been waiting for.
Well, it was a weekend of worry. That is not how it played out. HSBC actually acquired the UK assets, the British assets of Silicon Valley Bank. But for the Silicon Valley Bank, emergency measures were used, and we are talking about that this morning. That was the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, joining me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, reacting to the country's second largest bank failure in Silicon Valley Bank. Joining me right now is the Bear Traps Report founder, New York Times bestselling author, Larry McDonald. And Larry, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. I want to get your take on these emergency measures. How do you see things?
Well, first, let's back up a second. When you suppress the cost of capital for longer and longer and longer periods of time, you incentivize bad behavior. And as you know, I wrote the book on Lehman Brothers. It was a New York Times bestseller. And what I saw inside of Lehman and what we've just learned over the weekend as to the way this bank was managing itself, it's blood curdling, irresponsibility. And the Fed enabled it. And then when they juiced rates up higher, they essentially just blowing up these bad actors.
So they're claiming that this is not a bailout, Larry, because the bondholders and the stockholders are wiped out. Taxpayers are not paying for this. This is money from the fund, the fund which banks pay into. What about these emergency responses? Is this like another introduction or form of quantitative easing, Larry? Because it feels like that's where the conversation on Wall Street is going now. That we just saw a second major bank failure, and now the Fed is not going to be able to raise rates the way a lot of people thought. Assess this response from regulators.
Well, they're socializing the losses. So they suppress the cost of capital.
You can count on me and have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You might even say it's publicly subsidized and privately profitable. But that would be one way of putting it, right? Oh, wow. We are seeing the line going down quite significantly. Goth Engel Sinner, thank you for the 26 months of Prime. Thank you. Yeah, doesn't it kind of seem like that? It kind of seems like it's a system that's publicly subsidized and privately profitable. What a fucked up way of doing things. Someone should do something about this. You know, it would be nice to actually hear from some Marxists on TV when you talk about these things. You'd think if we had like a marketplace of ideas or whatever, and when these economic situations were occurring, just in the name of like having different viewpoints, you could have a Marxist actually kind of come on to try and explain these things. I would like for someone to give an invite to someone like that in one of these situations, just in the name of having free speech. Why not? Yeah, now is the time for Xi to sanction. Now he's just waiting to strike. He's waiting to strike. We have a free press. That's why Marxists aren't allowed. That's right. Good. We can't even have in our marketplace of ideas, even to just make fun of them, you know? Even just to hear their wacky, crazy, radical ideas about the economy and who has power in our economy and who's getting exploited. You know, these wacky Marxists. It'd be good to get one of those folks on the TV to talk about this. What do I know, though?
Incentivize bad actors, and now they're socializing the losses. Because at the end of the day, the Fed is backstopping this, and essentially QT, which they promised us would be $90 billion a month, essentially is over, because this is the Federal Reserve using its balance sheet to socialize the losses and provide liquidity to potentially lots of banks. There are a number of banks this morning that are down 50, 60%. So this has got a knock-on effect.
Is it happening?
They basically used a Band-Aid, but it's clearly a risk to the taxpayer, because at the end of the day, the taxpayer backs up the Federal Reserve.
Kind of feels like it's happening, isn't it?
So, Larry, you see this as a bailout?
Of course, it's a fucking bailout.
100%. Well, just look at the COVID crisis. It was a $10 trillion fiscal and monetary response. Okay, and the Lehman crisis was only $2.5 trillion. And now we're going into another
kind of like it's almost like it's like a top that's about to collapse, and as it spins, as it becomes more out of control, the distortions get even larger. It feels a little bit like that, isn't it? Yeah, great a feature of capitalism. Great economic system when we have this every couple of years now. Every couple of years, one of these adjustments that happens. Yeah, I would argue that it's been happening for 2 years. They just keep throwing money at the problem to delay it. For sure, they've just been kicking the can. It was happening at the beginning of the pandemic, and they've just been kicking the can down the road. For sure, but even since 2008, I mean, none of these problems have been addressed.
To bailouts, socializing the losses with the Fed balance sheet, right? And so your hard assets are going to be an incredible place to invest because the dollar's weakening globally as the U.S. is moving toward recession. This uncertainty and these bank runs nearly guarantee a deep recession. And then the Fed, and then eventually the taxpayer is going to have to come up with more when they do
the best system is where a market correction results in world war.
Right now
That's
we're
right.
in the monetary bailout.
Larry, you made a lot of news the other day when you joined me last week. You said that this, based on what your research is telling you and based on your calls with various institutions, that stocks would, you use this word, crash within 60 days. Ever since you said that, Larry, this market has been underwater. We're talking about declines of between 3 and 3.5%. Since you made that call, how much worse does it get, Larry?
Well, we were on the program last week, and all I was pointing out to
is
that when you look at the yield curve of the 2s, 10s, and that's just looking at where the 2-year Treasury is versus the 10-year, that was ominous. But then the performance of the regional banks, the underperformance has been spectacular. It's been growing weaker. And when you have this kind of dislocation where the banks are in trouble on a regional basis, it just leads to much bigger problems. And then we're not even talking about auto loans and commercial real estate. So,
no, we're not.
So it's going to be a really bad, kind of like an SNL 1980s type crisis.
We have so many bubbles. We have so many bubbles. This is what I mean. Yeah, we're talking about, like, we got our housing market bubble, like Dakadoon was saying. We got auto loans instead of home loans. We have this tech bubble. We're in like 5 bubbles within another larger bubble. And it's felt, I mean, it's psychologically damaging, like for me and for all of us to live in the system when you feel like these bubbles are going to burst at any moment. And then a day goes by and it doesn't burst. And then a week goes by and then a month and then 6 months and then a year and then 2 years and then 5 years. It's fucking psychologically traumatizing to constantly be existing in this system that feels like it's on the verge of collapse at any moment, isn't it? Like, honestly, what is that doing to all of us? Just waiting for this other shoe to drop. Constantly. Every bubble everywhere all at once. Yes. We have all the bubbles. It's fucking disturbing. To live, like, we can't live like this. We can't continue to live like this. I don't know. We actually can't. And this is the thing. This is like what we don't want to address. It makes people very uncomfortable, including me. But like, the rich are just going to keep getting bailed out. They're just going to keep taking and taking and taking. It's just not going to stop. And there's no one we can vote for that's going to really do anything meaningful to stop it. It's just going to keep happening again and again, and they're going to keep transferring wealth upwards again and again and again. Yeah, now we have MAID in Canada instead of any social safety net.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Magyar guy, thank you for the 4 months of Tier 1. Thank you. It's not like these banks didn't have a year of warning about interest rate hikes, but no amount of warning could have averted collapse, complete house of cards. For sure. I mean, they're all, not only were they being warned, but they specifically lobbied to ensure that they weren't protected. right? They've specifically lobbied to ensure that they were as deregulated as possible. It feels like we've been preparing for a storm, and here it is. It feels strange. Well, here's the question, Cheese Guevara, whether they're going to be able to kick the can down the road again. This is what we're going to be following along with this week. This is the attempted can kick. And we're going to see if they're able to successfully continue this zombie economy going for another couple months or years until the next swing, the next collapse. How long can we get away with this? So I don't want to go ahead, sit here and predict that the whole thing is on the verge of collapse. Like I said, it's felt like that for some time. Maybe they will successfully stave it off again this time, but it's like, we can't keep going on like this. I mean, or maybe we can, I don't know, but it's certainly not very pleasant.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I am scared, smiley face.
Thank you, Sean, for the 25 months tier 1. As the alert says, though, you can indeed count on me, and you will have good old Rob to talk you through this. Until maybe eventually Twitch collapses as well. I will be here to talk you through this as long as I can, though. I promise you that.
It drops 20 to 30% from here, because at the end of the day, Maria, we're trading at 19 times earnings, and we have like literally 4 banks that have blown up in the last week. We've got one more on the way, probably today or tomorrow.
Okay, and I saw your tweet over the weekend about those regionals. You said that you shared this with your client, that all the signs were there. The regional banks were underperforming the S&P 500 by 19% year over year today versus 9% 9 days ago. So you're saying that indicator alone would have had you be selling regional banks weeks ago?
Yes, and we have our index. We've got our 21 Lehman systemic risk indicators. And there's a number of things that have been deteriorating in terms of interbank trust, credit spreads on commercial real estate. I mean, there's just so many things that have been deteriorating, auto loans. So all the bank assets are in trouble. And the problem is the highest quality assets, right? So not all the bank assets. What I mean is, your auto loans, your commercial real estate, there's a lot of things that are in trouble on bank balance sheets. But your highest quality assets, your treasuries and your mortgage-backed securities, just got really lit up in flames by the Federal Reserve hiking rates 500 basis points inside of 14 months. And remember, when you have these guests on the air, right, they've been claiming that, okay, soft landing, no landing, and they're basically selling us, this is Wall Street strategists, that you can just hike 500 basis points in 14 months and there's a price to pay for that. I mean, this is not free, because when you raise interest rates that fast, you essentially light the high-quality assets of these banks on fire.
All right, we will leave it there. Larry, you just said that this market is having another 20 to 30% fall from here, and you think this emergency response from the Fed is, in fact, a bailout. Larry, it's Federal Reserve Chairman J.
This is from 5 days ago. Experts warn stock market crash could come in a matter of days. Here, I got another question though. How about this? Is this good? Is this good? Again, I'm not a trained economist. My understanding though is that you don't want the line to look like this. That's my understanding. My sort of like layman's understanding of it. This is First Republic Bank. There's like a... Can I even look at this? There is like a live... thing here from Bloomberg, but I don't... you need to pay for fucking... accounts at all these websites in order to look at them. Forbidden knowledge.
Well,
let's see what else we have here.
Welcome back. Take a look at where markets ended a volatile week after the
and
jobs
take this,
report Friday.
Take this with a grain of salt. This is all Fox Business, so we're getting this sort of like the movement of the propaganda from the conservative movement, the conservative wing of the corporate media establishment, and they're all predicting collapse. Maybe that's being done for partisan reasons as well, right? Because maybe they think that ultimately this kind of programming is going to hurt the Democratic Party and hurt Joe Biden, the people that are kind of in charge right now. So this is all from the Fox Business standpoint. We can take a look at some other corporate media coverage of this to see what other networks are saying. But I do think it's interesting that Fox Business is kind of going all into this narrative about impending doom.
And Jay Powell's comments that rates could go higher for longer. Economist and author of
MSNBC is probably doing it. Everything. Here's why everything's fine.
That imperil our future and how to survive them. Nouriel
Here's why actually everything is going okay.
Warned that markets this year are going to get hit with what he is calling a perfect storm: recession, a debt crisis, and out of control inflation. He joins me now. Nouriel, it's wonderful to have you this weekend. Thanks so much for being here. Walk us through this perfect storm that you are expecting.
Well, the nature of both economic, monetary, and financial risk has changed a lot in the last 2-3 years. A couple of years ago, we were worried about lowflation and deflation. Now we're worrying about inflation. A couple of years ago, we were worried there was too much savings, not enough demand, secular stagnation. Now we have to worry about stagflation, recession, and inflation. A couple of years ago, we were worried that interest rates were too low, and now they are rising because of inflation, and with large stocks of private and public debt, eventually debt ratios may become unsustainable. We were worried about hyperglobalization. Now we have to worry about deglobalization, balkanization of global supply chains, fragmentation, protectionism. And a couple of years ago, you had the everything bubble. We were worried about an asset and a credit bubble and a boom and a bubble in asset prices. Now there has been the beginning of a bust and a crash, and there is a risk there'll be more of it. So even the economic, monetary, and financial risk are very different from what we had them 2 or 3 years ago.
Nouriel, do you think the catalyst here is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates? We are about a year from when the Fed started this process of raising interest rates. The Fed started on March 17th, a year ago, raising rates by 25 basis points. We've got several more meetings, and we heard
TRRS,
Jay Powell on Capitol Hill.
Dehydrated food slop buckets or whatever. I should start selling branded versions of those. That's where the big money is. Not trying to get subscriptions from the fine folks that watch this program, but selling a real important item of TRRS branded dehydrated bunker supplies. I could be like a Mr. Beast if you had my face on there. I don't know what I would go with. I can't even do the deranged Mr. Beast smile. I don't even understand. It's like, you had that on there? TRRS protein paste. That's right. A Kami slop bucket mukbang stream. That actually sounds pretty solid. What an interesting turn of phrase also. I have rearranged and cleaned your bunker slop display.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Dehydrated avocado toast. Good. Thank you, Critical Mass, for the gifted sub. Thank you.
Hill this week suggests that we're going to see many more rate hikes to come, and he may look at 50 basis points versus 25 basis points for the next one. Have we felt the real, true impact of this string of rate hikes yet?
Not yet, because there are these long and variable lags. It takes about 12 to 18 months until you reach the impact of this tightening of monetary policy on real economic activity. and real economic activity has started to soften, but not enough. Unfortunately, I feel that the
You can
Fed
tell this guy's
will have
credible
to
'cause
raise
of the
rates
accent.
at least by 50 basis points
I
next
trust
time
him.
around, and have to push the Fed funds rates to at least 6%. Previously, they thought they could stop at 5.25. The problem with that is that with interest rates this high and debt ratios high, you're going to have a significant correction further in equity markets. Bond yields are going to go higher. Credit spreads are going to go higher. So you'll have financial distress. And what has happened with Silicon Valley Bank is an example of the losses on bond portfolios that you obtain where yields are higher and the price is lower. But that's going to also...
Okay, I'm not absorbing any of this information. I don't know about you folks. I'm not absorbing any of it at all. Here's from an hour ago. Here's CBC News from an hour ago.
Let's bring in...
That guy sounds like the bad guy in like a 80s Cold War action movie. That's my main takeaway. I'm glad we can agree on that that was not in any way useful or helpful to anything. Thank you, Siperiski. I got your I grabbed your link. You can maybe look at that one as well. Need to put some Subway Surfer and kinetic sand videos while watching that. Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes it tolerable.
Paul Hunter, who's in our Washington Bureau, who's been watching this along with us. Paul, let's walk through what the president had to say.
Yeah, John, well, in a sense, he said, take a breath, have confidence, believe in the system. Your money's there and available to you in whatever bank you use right now. Rest assured, as he put it.
Oh, yeah.
Believe in the regulations that came out of the 2008 crisis, which this isn't, and believe in the steps his administration
Continue
took
believing
this weekend
in the system.
To
this is
prevent
really like the Roddy Piper glasses, the They Live glasses. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name of the film. Trust the system. Don't worry, this is not the 2008 crisis, everyone. It is the 2023 one. Yeah. Believe in the 2008 regulations that don't exist because we repealed them. Correct. The most intense doctrinal language. Seriously, we're gonna look at the Biden clip after this. Believe in the system, folks. You must believe. It's like a fairy. It's like a fucking fairy, literally. If you just believe, it's like Tinkerbell. If you just believe, folks, it will continue. It's really kind of a mask off moment, isn't it? They're not supposed to say it out loud like that. That's how fake this is. It's literally as real as a fairy from a Disney film. Just keep believing, folks, and the economy will flap its wings again. You must believe. Your belief gives it its meaning. They're really kind of spelling it out for us, isn't it? Don't even check your accounts, folks. It's all there, every cent accounted for. Clap, children. Clap as loudly as you can. That's what they're saying to us. That's what they're saying to us. It is like when Bush told everyone to go shopping. Keep thinking happy thoughts. The invisible hand will pat us all on the head while the economy collapses. Exactly, just click your heels together and make a wish. Just wish that if you click your heels together and just wish that the money is still in your account, it will be. If you just wish for the system to continue, it will. Now watch this drive.
This from spreading. Trust him was his message, that he will hold to account those responsible for what's happened in California, and trust him that taxpayer money is not what's coming to the aid of SVB right now. Those
they're just
were his
changing the number in
headlines.
the
Worth
computer.
noting
Don't worry,
as well,
folks.
John, he thought it crucial enough to warrant going on national television at
They'll get a stern talking to, absolutely.
this morning Eastern time. Those are the messages he very much wants heard, and heard early. We saw the lineups at U.S. banks over the weekend. He wants to stop people from thinking they need to do that. and he wants to stop it quickly. This is all about preventing contagion or spreading, something Biden is hardly alone in hoping can be achieved.
As Scott Peterson has been reminding us this morning, the president had to speak before the markets opened in 23 minutes from now. That was key. When Wall Street gets going on this, we've seen around the world markets struggling to deal with what could be or might be the fallout of all of this. But he made another of other comments in terms of his record. Paul, let's talk about the politics around this.
Let's not talk into your track record of stopping contagions lately either.
And the challenges that it poses for him, his presidency, and his agenda.
Sure.
And Lamport, I think this is an important point. The awful thing is that we, the plebs, also have to participate in stock market, whether it be in the form of 401ks or college funds. And this is how we are held hostage to this system, right? And we allow the rich and powerful to just engage in this process of highly risky, completely consequence-free gambling with our money. And when these institutions inevitably begin to fail and collapse, people say like, well, you got to bail us out because look, we got to make people have got to make payroll. You got your retirement funds tied up in this. All kinds of everyday people are going to be affected if this collapses. And like, yes, that is it. That's true. We are indeed being held hostage so that every single time that one of these corrections happens, we can advocate for the government or the Fed to step in and rescue these extremely powerful banking interests. Because if they don't, regular people are going to be affected. But as it's always going to be, it's always going to end up being a upward transfer of wealth. But yeah, it is true though. Like it's absolutely, it's completely like. That's why you have people defending the system. Just believe in this system. People that have no fucking capital, that are working class, that are poor, that are paycheck to paycheck, that don't have any money for an emergency. That's why they'll throw their bodies on the tracks to defend this system. Because they have that, it's like the Stockholm Syndrome effect. You know? Because we're all held hostage to it. Like I said, if this thing does collapse, we're all going to be impacted by it. I'm sure I will be. But we still can't help but have this sick level of satisfaction when we see this start to happen though, right? Can't help it. Can't help ourselves. Now let's continue with this.
Look, the politics of this are all about making sure, in one sense, that taxpayers don't think this is a government bailout of super rich venture capitalists. For the moment, that's a big part of who has lost money here. Biden wants people to know not only is this not a bailout, i.e. free taxpayer money for them, but that those who made wrong-minded decisions that led to SVB's failure will be held accountable. He emphasized that in those remarks. That aside, the balancing act here is that the U.S. economy right now is a major challenge for Biden as we head into the 2024 election cycle. He's taken...
This isn't a bailout presidential statement is leading to a lot of questions that was already answered by the statement. Why is David Lynch giving me financial advice? I don't know. He's pulling double duty. I should play the Twin Peaks theme while he talks.
Can heat already for inflation and, in turn, for the high interest rates, a key factor, by the way, cited in SVB's collapse. And now this banking collapse and accompanying jitters are in front of him. He is, meanwhile, evidently set to officially announce he is running for re-election. And so it's vital for him that this be sorted quickly and to the degree possible without significant economic or financial fallout. If contagion happens and other banks teeter and a bailout is seen as a necessary tool, he risks losing the cred he has of, fighting for the regular voter and instead of padding the pockets of the rich. Or if he doesn't, come to a bailout point, the risk is that contagion, if it comes, could spread and hurt everyone. That's all a ways down the line, John, and only hypothetical at this point, but it's surely on Biden's radar. He knows he needs to stop this, and he needs to stop it quickly.
And this is all happening very quickly. Paul, thanks so much for this. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
CBC's Paul Hunter live in our Washington, D.C. bureau. For more on this, we're joined now by Carl Shimada. Now, he is the chief market strategist at Corpay, and he joins us from Toronto today. Carl, thanks so much for joining us.
Look at the experts that they bring on to talk about this shit as well. Again, I would love to see an actual Marxist economist be asked to opine on these panels, rather than these either private or public sector ghouls who participate in this system.
Absolutely. Great to be here on such a busy day.
Well, exactly. A lot to understand around all this, a lot to get our heads around. The Superintendent of Financial Institutions has seized control of SVB, that in this country. So what exactly does that mean?
Right. So that means essentially that they're going to look to put lending activities on pause. They're going to most likely look to sell off the assets of the Canadian unit, and essentially sort of ring fence the Canadian banking sector against any further systemic risk that could emanate from this collapse in a relatively important U.S. lender.
So what does this mean in terms of the daily activities for Canadian, let's begin with bankers and then we'll go to investors?
Right. So I don't think this is going to have an enormous impact directly. The Canadian unit was lending to, the Canadian venture sector. This will clearly diminish the flow into that sector over the coming months and years. That is unfortunately a drag on Canada's longer term productivity. But the big impact here is really what is happening south of the border, right? This fact that we're seeing these rising interest rates in the U.S. putting pressure on the U.S. banking sector, that sort of problems are widening out. What that will do is sort of diminish confidence in global financial markets and weigh on Canadian equity markets. So that means that investors need to brace themselves really for a very turbulent period ahead, and businesses and consumers will certainly need to watch this, in order to determine whether they should be confident about the future right now.
So arguably two things to get our heads around here in terms of what you're talking about, the waves that wash up on our shores from around the world, whatever is happening in terms of fallout from what's going on with SVB and Signature and what U.S. authorities are doing, but also the contributory factors to what happened to SVB, the rising interest rates, the issues, the trouble they had with the bonds, people wanting their money out and fast. Crypto, of course, is floating around out there in the equation, especially around Signature. So all of those factors do exist in this country. So what do we look at in terms of similar conditions and what effects we might feel because of those conditions on the Canadian banking sector moving forward?
Right. So, John, you nailed it right there. The fact is that, the big proximate cause behind all of this is that we had years of very, very cheap money, many institutions, many individuals.
Good thing, though, that during those years of very cheap money, that people had the ability to get homes, right? Famously, it became easier for people to go about their lives, not harder. Average people were able to use this to their benefit, getting mortgages and loans. Good thing that those years are coming to an end, and we really accomplished a lot. We built infrastructure with these low interest rates, built infrastructure projects. Enhanced our welfare state. Now these years are coming to an end, and a good thing everyone benefited from that. And now we're heading into these leaner times when, then it's going to get really difficult. Good thing that the last 10 years have been really equitable in terms of our ability to take this historically low interest rates and cheap money and actually do something good with that, valuable for society. Otherwise, we'd be in a lot of trouble right now.
Many businesses added a lot of leverage. They borrowed a lot of money during that period. We've seen rates move up at perhaps the sharpest pace in modern history. And we're now beginning to see things break. And so the big challenge here in Canada is that our households, the household sector in Canada, is among the most indebted in the developed world. And so, as rates rise, we could see a retracement in terms of household behavior. We could see people spending a lot less money as they pay more to borrow money. And that could ultimately hit consumption in this country. So we could see a lot of weakness in the underlying economy.
And I mean, we have to, it just seems, doesn't it seem like there's just a cascading series of dominoes that are falling as well? And this is just the latest in the series of it, and each one is becoming more impactful and more significant. You know, like FTX a few months ago, that was just another one of the dominoes. It's not like these are all isolated incidents. These are all part of an ongoing kind of narrative, an escalating crisis. Surely we didn't blow all that cheap money on speculation and war. Yeah, or in these completely like fake, fraudulent tech companies making the next Juicero or whatever it was. Good thing we didn't waste that time doing that, because oh boy, that would have been really, really nasty stuff.
And all of that would be bad for the Canadian banking sector. That would, diminish earnings. I wouldn't say that we're looking at anything like what we've seen south of the border in the regional bank sector, but we could certainly see big headwinds for the Canadian banking sector in the months and years to come.
We saw it on Friday with the news of SVB coming out and Canadian banks losing some $19.7 billion in value. Now that's up and down as the market goes, but what impact could that have in the short term, and might we have to watch for more of that?
I think we do have to watch for more of that, and I think ultimately what it's all about is the fact that consumers and businesses are going to be more cautious. They're going to borrow less money. And when you borrow less money in Canada, that is it is negative for earnings at the banks. So, what investors are doing right now is they're telling us that we are going to see that sort of period of retrenchment. They're not saying, and I really want to sort of underline this, they're not saying that there's any systemic risk issues at Canadian banks. Canadian banks are not exposed in the same way to this, to sort of the long-dated securities portfolios that are hitting the regional banks in the U.S., and Canadian banks have very well diversified deposit bases. So, again, I just wanted to kind of underline that we're not looking at sort of a systemic issue here, but we are looking at headwinds for the sector. A year or a couple of years at least in which banks underperform relative to their historic patterns.
Hold on, sorry. Folks, please, it's not systemic. Don't worry. It's not systemic. You have nothing to worry about. This is just, we'll get through this period of adjustment. It's not in any way indicative of a larger failure. No one has anything to worry about. Just keep believing in the system. Just keep believing in it. I need to underline not to panic. Please do not panic. Our economy.
Excuse me. All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
Fucking great movie. God. Can you play the OJ scene on the boat? I'm not just going to start playing scenes from Naked Gun, okay? That was for a specific reason. It was for a specific reason. He was the best. God, that movie's so good. Fucking great. Let's hear from the President of the United States himself. How about that? Let's hear from the President.
Before I leave for California, I want to briefly speak about what's happening in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days, Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. Small businesses across the country, the deposit accounts at these banks can breathe easier knowing they'll be able to pay their workers and pay their bills. And their hardworking employees can breathe easier as well. Last week, when we learned of the problems of the banks and the impact they could have on jobs of small businesses and banking system overall, I instructed my team to act quickly to protect these interests. They've done that. On Friday, the government regulator in charge, the FDIC, took control of Silicon Valley Bank's assets. And over the weekend, it took control of Signature Bank's assets. Treasury Secretary Yellen and a team of banking regulators have taken action, immediate action. And here are the highlights. First, all customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today. That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Let me repeat that. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers.
America's back,
Instead,
baby.
the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the Deposit Insurance Fund. Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them. Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works. And fourth, there are important questions of how these banks got into the circumstance in the first place. We must get the full accounting of what happened and why those responsible can be held accountable. In my administration, no one is above the law. And finally, we must reduce the risk of this happening again. During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place tough requirements on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, including the Dodd-Frank law to make sure that the crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again. Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements.
Well, why did you re-roll them, sir?
Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again, and to protect American jobs and small businesses. Look, the bottom line is this. Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed. On top of all this, let's also take a look at a moment to put the situation in a broader context. We've made strong economic progress in the past 2 years. We've created more than 12 million new jobs. More jobs in 2 years than any president has.
How many of those new created jobs are just people going back to work, as I've outlined before? People that were able to pay their bills for the first time in their fucking lives because they had access to the expanded unemployment or the child tax credit. How many of those people are just going back to work, going back to the gig economy? All these jobs that they're bragging about, by the way.
Ever created in a single 4-year term. Unemployment is below 4% for 14 straight months. Take-home pay for workers is going up, especially for lower and middle-income workers.
$8 an hour for my $800 a month rent.
Record numbers
I'm
of
back at work though. Hey,
start new businesses. More than 10 million of them. More than 10 million applications over the last 2 years starting businesses. Now we need to
people
keep
are starting
the program,
small
this
businesses,
progress
folks. The
That's what
economy's saved.
swift action that my administration over the past few years is all about. Protecting depositors, protecting the banking system, protecting the economic gains we've made together for the American people.
You have 4 million
Thank you.
Herbalife
God
startups.
bless you, and may God protect our troops. See you in California.
What does it have to do with the troops, sir? What the hell does that have to do with the troops? Jesus. That's his sign off, no matter what they're talking about. That's always his sign off. I don't know, folks. Does that fill you with confidence? You tell me. Are you inspired? Are you filled with confidence by that? Always good when the most powerful man in America, technically, the front man, anyways, the front man for the criminal cartel, the PR guy, when he's got to go on TV and be like, "Don't worry, folks. Keep believing in the system. Your money's totally okay." Always a good sign. Always a very good sign.
They know.
As we track the latest developments surrounding the closure of SVB, want to bring in a journalist who's been following this story super closely. Liz Hoffman is here, Semaphore Business and Finance editor. Over the weekend, she reported on a number of hedge funds offering to buy startups' deposits that were stranded. That was, of course, before the government stepped in.
Clapping your hands, children.
But we're all trying to figure out, has what the Fed has done stopped things?
I think they haven't so much stopped the run as they've said they're going to fund it. Right. You'll note they didn't say every deposit in the country is now insured. I think mostly
but
for
they kind of
legal.
Did implicitly.
A little bit, but I think there's some gray areas where they can actually do that at the FDIC. And they said, we're not going to stop this, but we are going to fund it. So they opened the spigot and via the banks are going to put just a fire hose of money into deposit.
The big question is all the folks at JP Morgan and Bank of America and Wells Fargo whose phone was ringing off the hook over the weekend because people wanted to open up accounts, whether those calls stop or do they continue? And if they continue, we got a different problem.
Agreed. I don't know. I mean, First Republic stock is down 60, 70% pre-market. That's a different, than
even
the deposits.
With the promise for the
even with the and they raised money last night separately from the new Fed facility. So,
but is that
I'm
hoping we don't have a problem. But do you look at that and say, okay, there's a problem here? Or do you think that's idiosyncratic to that bank?
I don't think it's idiosyncratic. My sense is all these regionals are still here on Friday, but they're half as big as they were last week.
That sounds pretty bad.
And by the way, they're going to replace this incredibly cheap deposit funding with prevailing Fed funds rate in the new facility, which means their margins just collapsed.
Right.
So none of these stocks are going to trade at remotely what they've traded at for the last couple of years.
Right. They're not going to trade because the business model is not the same. But are the deposits going to stick? I guess that's the.
I don't know. Yeah. And the problem, it's not really an issue, right? Because if they can take their assets
Inspiring
and take them
less
to the Fed
confidence
and
this
give that
lady.
money to the depositors, it'll come down, but they'll just be a lot smaller than they were a week ago.
Are you in the camp of this becomes disinflationary insofar as if all these small banks, either lose deposits, get treated like systemically important institutions, therefore have to raise capital requirements and all sorts of other things, means that the loans that they're going to be providing folks are going to cost a lot more, meaning there's going to be a lot less?
The answer is yeah, but the other way to look at it is that these loans were massively below market for a long time. And look, I've heard slightly conflicting ththings, right? I was talking to a banker at a GSIB over the weekend. He was kind of complaining, saying that, our
It probably remains true as well, though, that we've talked about the idea of what a prospects of a Trump versus Biden rematch would be and how I don't want to make any predictions. I think it would be close. I think Trump probably will win the Republican nomination. He's not a guarantee. I would certainly not count that out, but it's certainly not a guarantee to beat Biden in an election. But really, when this house of cards does collapse, though, who's going to be left holding the bag? No free will. That's what I mean, right? Who's going to be left holding the bag? If Biden is sitting there holding the bag when the house of cards does collapse, they are fucked. I think it's safe to say. I think it's absolutely safe to say that they're going to be completely fucked in that scenario. If they can keep, that's the question, right? Can they keep kicking the can down the road? Can they keep just kicking the can down the road so the next guy is left holding the bag when it finally eventually collapses? That's kind of the question.
Competitive advantage is that we get excess deposits because people think that we will be here tomorrow,
right,
and that we're going to lose that to the small banks. The other side is, why would you have your money at one of these tiny banks when there's even like a remote risk of this happening again? So I don't know. I think it'll be a very messy couple of weeks in the short-term funding markets.
What do you make of the venture capital community over the weekend, loud and proud on Twitter, begging for a bailout?
Yeah.
Shameless.
This is a community you've written a lot about over the years, and I'm thinking of the David Saxes of the world and everybody else who was Jason Calcanis screaming, "We need a bailout, we need a bailout," at the same time that the venture capital community.
This is a good point too, Pathogen. A big part of kicking the can down is the strength of the US dollar. Isn't the next crisis the one that knocks it off as a reserve currency? And all this is happening while there's this de-dollarization process happening with this global power shift as well, and BRICS expanding, and all these like alternate financial institutions now popping up as all these other countries are moving away from the US dollar. Doesn't it feel a little bit like all of these are just like converging, right? All these issues and factors are all just converging on something, right? That's eventually going to just spectacularly explode. God, it's like I can't help it. Like we were saying, it's like it's impossible. We live in this society where we feel this overwhelming sensation that the other shoe is about to drop. So maybe my brain is just hardwired to see these possible massive crises coming. Maybe they will successfully kick the can down the road. Yeah, and the Iran-Saudi deal is massively accelerating that process. Like it's in motion right now. It's in motion right now. I would imagine that the other Western countries are not too happy with the U.S. fiscal policy that keeps messing up their financial stability. To say nothing of all these like Western countries that America is like saying to them, like Germany, for example, saying you can't do deals with Russia. You can't make a deal with Russia for cheap gas. You have to go through us. You know, and just literally just destroying their own energy future. Or saying to Ukraine back in 2014, you can't make a deal with Russia. You can't say no to the IMF and make a deal with Russia and get a better deal from them. Or else we're going to come in, you know, push a color revolution in your country, replace the government, start a proxy war, ensure that you accept the terms of the IMF in terms of the development, and accept the terms of BlackRock and all these evil corporations to come in and develop whatever is left of Ukraine after the war. All because they tried to make a bilateral deal with Russia that would have benefited everyone in the country. Everyone. 64 years of you can't do any business with or allow your citizens to travel to Cuba. Exactly. Like the other countries are getting fed up. You still have Western Europe like completely subservient to the U.S., but that's the amazing thing. Like in this new shift in global power, how it's countries like Saudi Arabia and India who have been faithful, loyal allies and have helped, been there to go along with whatever economic schemes the U.S. has been dictating for the last several decades. They're jumping off the ship now. You know, it's interesting and fascinating, but is this the incident that's going to be the inciting incident that's going to kick off the full-scale collapse? We'll see. I don't know. Maybe they will kick the can down the road. It's impossible to say. The contradictions do indeed appear to be heightening, though. They certainly do.
It has historically been relatively libertarian, called for less regulation for the most part. By the way, SVB, called for less regulation. In fact, less regulation that probably allowed this to happen to begin with. Special tax treatment in the form of carried interest. Does that change, do you think, in the public mind's eye?
I mean, the
way people look at venture capital?
I mean, there's no ideologues in foxholes, right? I mean, that stuff goes out the window quickly.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't have bailed them out. I'm just suggesting that there might be some other ramifications.
We know you're not saying
I totally
that,
agree. I think this will not make anyone in Silicon Valley more popular with the rest of the country.
Yeah, Vanguard should be ready any moment now.
I think a little differently about the moral hazard argument. The depositors at Silicon Valley Bank were not mom and pop, but the checking and savings account product, the people who open those can't realistically, I don't think, be expected to stay on top of bank balance sheet risks. Like, that's not their job. And if you're going to push that to depositors, then what are banks here for, right? So I think this is a little bit of a different argument than 2008, but like politically, I would expect there to be a lot of...
One sector to watch at the...
I don't know, folks. I don't know. When was this? An hour ago.
Open this morning. It's the banks under pressure. Even after...
About that Vanguard. Yeah, fortunately, we live in a society where we have a highly organized and militant socialist movement, a highly organized and militant labor movement, so we're ready to go. Don't worry. When the shit hits the fan, we're going to be ready to go to ensure that we, institute the changes that we all know we need to see. We're doing great in that respect. So
the regulator swooped in to reassure depositors. The KBW Bank Index, worst week last week since March of 2020.
Biden's favorite game since he's 1,000 years old.
More. Hey, Kaylee.
Yeah, worst week since 2020 last week, John, and this week is not starting out on a better note, despite the fact that depositors of both Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank are going to be made whole. And the Fed has announced this new bank term lending facility that is going to lend to banks at extremely favorable rates. That is not helping the regional banks this morning. Clearly, there is still fear out there about this spreading elsewhere. Just take a look at the shares of First Republic, down 65% here at the opening bell. This is on top of a 33% loss last week. A week ago, this was $122 stock. This morning, it is trading at $28 a share. That is how brutal this wipeout has been, John. And it's elsewhere in the regional banks as well. PacWest, Western Alliance, Zions, they're all down substantially in the first few minutes of trading here. Western Alliance down 70% with about a minute and a half into the trading session. We will see if these losses hold throughout the day. And it's bleeding through to some of those larger banks as well. The conversation we were having on Friday is these are diversified financials. They don't have as much risk. They don't have as much concentrated exposure, so they were relatively more resilient, but that is not the case this morning. Really, all of the banks are lower right now. Citigroup, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all down in the ballpark of between 4 and 5%. JP Morgan, the relative outperformer here, but still down the better part of 2% early in the session. And of course, we have seen the banks under pressure for some time now, John, but it is the regionals that have been lagging over the course of the last year. Again, the concern here being that they are more exposed to the Fed's rate hiking cycle, and it's raising questions this morning about how much further the Fed realistically can go when you were seeing this.
That's a good point, Carrier Wave. The idea about how the pandemic was like 3 years ago. We're coming up on the pandemic anniversary, which to me is the day they shut down the NBA. When all this like crazy economic tumult was going on then as well. Is the 3 years ago since when this exact scenario was playing out, and they just magically invented $10 trillion or whatever it was to keep the system alive. That was 3 years ago this week. They took away my precious NBA. Beware the Ides of March. Very true. It's funny you mentioned that. My kid over the week became obsessed with the Shakespeare play Julius Caesar. He's really into that. You do got to beware those Ides of March, though. Very true.
Kind of pain in the regional banking sector, John.
Those names getting absolutely battered. Kelly Lyons, thanks for that. A lot of analysts weighing in on the situation. We spoke to Jared Cassidy of RBC. He published this. He wrote the following: though we recognize we are not out of the woods, there is a light shining through that will lead us out. This sounds promising. We expect there will be opportunities over the near term to buy banks as the market realizes the actions announced yesterday will limit and prevent future bank runs. That last line. Can we go back to that board with all the banks on it? And just look at that last line. Jared Cassidy of RBC believes at some point this market will realize the actions announced yesterday will limit and prevent future bank runs. And we still look like this morning. First Republic down 65%, PacWest down 36%, Western Alliance down 74%. CFRA's Ken Leon has this to say this morning. The fallout of this idiosyncratic episode is higher perceived risk in the financial system.
Oh, it's an idiosyncratic episode. Okay. These fucking people, and these are like the robed, basically like monks who we've tasked with like explaining these economic issues to us because it's all being done in these systems that mere mortals can't understand. This is how they obfuscate like the reality of what's happening.
To say this morning, the fallout of this idiosyncratic episode is higher perceived risk in the financial system and worries about contagion that we do not see ahead. The larger banks are likely to gain market share from smaller banks in the current environment. Ken, I'm pleased to say, joins us right now. Ken, can we just start with the market action this morning? You and I have got a lot to talk about, but what do you make of these moves in the early part of the session?
So there's investor worries really on the depositor side to see if there's going to be an exit out of some of the smaller mid-sized banks. Larger banks are fortress balance sheets. That's the deposit side. The other side is really what triggered this was really their debt investments in securities like mortgage-backed securities held to maturity. If we had any change from the Fed that say perhaps clean it up in 1 year.
Where have I heard that phrase before? The mortgage-backed securities.
That becomes a risk at large for the industry. We don't see that, but that's what really unwinds in this kind of market is trying to create confidence. I think the president did that for the general economy. But as we look at equities here, there's still all the stirrings as it relates to what is here. Now, what's different than 2008 is these are transparent assets. They're all in the 10K. And it's just a question of going through each of these banks. Obviously, the ones that had concentration in deposits got hurt quickly. First Republic today, especially with the Fed and JP Morgan coming in for $70 billion, but it hasn't helped. So obviously the equity markets are very worried.
I want to start with you. And
well, this is from 48 minutes ago.
This seems to be winning some support, let's call it, in terms of how it was structured, the delicacy with which they're trying to not bail out shareholders, but protect depositors. Do you think this was a well-crafted rescue?
Look, I think this was a giant bailout. I'd been hoping that they'd been able to sell the assets in the customer bank of basis of the bank and not resort to essentially providing unlimited deposit insurance. The predicate of deposit insurance has always been about protecting the little guy and having sophisticated counterparties. Banks bear some risk and have some market risk. So I was hoping for different news this morning.
So what do you think should have been done? I mean, in terms of protecting the little guy, people would argue, well, what about small businesses who have accounts over that cap?
Look, we're talking about a bank that had 97% uninsured deposits. We're talking whose biggest creditor seems to have been a $3 billion account with a cryptocurrency. And we're talking about a bank where all the insured depositors had already been taken care of. And so I think what we're doing here is risking a fundamental structural change to our regulatory system in a situation where you had a bank
over 250K
completely under the nose of the San Francisco Fed. Where was the supervision of this bank? People talk a lot about regulation and the rules. I'm asking the question about where were the supervisors as this bank quadrupled in size over a couple of years and blew up a giant unhedged interest rate risk tied to Fannie, Freddie, and U.S. Treasuries. How was this allowed to happen right under the nose of the San Francisco Fed?
What do you have any theories on that? And what about the piece of regulation Dodd-Frank that kind of enshrined
right under the nose of all these regulators? It's the darndest thing. How is this going on? Unbelievable.
Current financial system.
Yeah, look, Dodd-Frank regulates laws and rules. You can't regulate judgment. And I am completely bewildered and betwixt as to where the lack of regulatory judgment was and allowing this bank to pursue such an unusual funding model, entirely reliant on uninsured deposits, investing all of that money in low-yield mortgage-backed securities a year ago, It's like the Fed had no idea that interest rates were going to rise over the next year and allowing that to go unhedged. There's only
it reminds me of another time, again, when these banks took all these toxic mortgages and bundled them together. Remember that? All those banks were taking all these toxic underwater mortgages and just bundling all of them together. And then the rating agencies that were supposed to do their jobs were all giving them great ratings to be a great investment. Remember that? And then you had people betting against all that to fail. Remember how that was going on? How did that end up working out for all of us? I don't know. I can't recall.
So much you can legislate and regulate. It comes down to regulators doing their job. And in this case, I think the Federal Reserve failed to do its job.
From 2008,
so,
it
Roger,
never happened
I'm curious
again.
what you would say about this, because to put it differently,
Exactly.
this bank went from, I forget
Glad
exactly
we all
the
stopped
starting
doing
number,
that. We all
maybe
agreed to knock
60
that
billion
off.
to 200 billion in deposits or something, because it was the recipient of such stimulus largesse, like many deposit institutions across the country. It has to make a NIM, it has to make a spread, so it turned around and invested that in what it thought was a relatively high-yielding option at the time. What should have been done differently?
Well, I am with Aaron. Clearly, it was taking enormous interest rate risk, right? Investing in long-term bonds while funding itself with overnight deposits. And clearly, the regulators should have been paying attention. It could have invested in short-term instruments. It wouldn't have taken on risk. It wouldn't have made much money.
Exactly. It wouldn't have made any. I mean, the fundamentals of banking is to capture that spread. There was the same idea that there is no alternative, that people couldn't get income anywhere. Well, banks had the same problem, so they were forced to get it wherever they could. That was the only what else were they supposed to put that cash in?
Yeah, this is the search for yield problem, right? When the Fed pumps the system full of liquidity, but at the same time, interest rates are so low that they can't make much money, what they do end up taking is more risk. And that's where the supervisors have to be more active, trying to look at what banks are doing. Clearly, as Aaron says, a bank which is funded with 93% wholesale deposits, which are very runnable, and investing it in long-term bonds when the Fed is going to raise interest rates. I mean, that should be red flag, red flag, red flag after red flag for the regulators.
David, let me bring you in
Damn
here.
regulators.
Sort of broaden it out and put this in context. I saw you nodding along as we're having this discussion. Do you favor what the government did here? Do you think that this was the right move both for the public and for the markets?
Similar to so much of what happened after 2008, I don't think the major issue is what they did today. It's all the things that built up to making today necessary. I agree with everything both of the prior guests said. I cannot believe the president dared to say, well, we just need more regulation. We're going to get more regulation to keep this from happening again. I thought they already did that. As a matter of fact, they promised the American people they did. This is such a failure of competence that I can't.
That's when they say, oh, the other previous, which is true. They say, oh, Trump repealed and rolled back a lot of these regulations. Well, you've been in charge for 2 years. What the fuck are you doing? What are you waiting for? How is that still an excuse? Why don't you re-roll it? The old administration isn't there. Well, that's what I mean. Like, they can't. The guy's wrong by saying he's pointing out the fact that, like, under Biden this stuff is not true. But I think it is true, though, that regardless of the fact that this stuff has been rolled back, these meager reforms, what have they been doing the last 2 years? Why, if these were important regulations that Trump got rid of, why didn't they reinstitute them or make any effort to do so over the last 2 years? What's the holdup? Exactly. And now the Republicans control the House, so not so much we can do about that. That's a shame. But Biden can say, like, oh, we really want to put those regulations. We want to do those regulations. We want to finish the job on bringing those regulations back. But you got to vote blue in order to do it. So make sure everyone votes blue, and we can do that. We're going to get right on that.
believe people put up with it. And the one thing I'll add that the other two guests didn't get into is the Fed's culpability, not merely as the regulatory overseer, but as the setter of monetary policy. That easy monetary policy that they left on way too long after the COVID emergency is what enabled that deposit base to go up so much. All the silly IPOs and SPACs and the shiny objects, that ridiculous crypto story, that's how that deposit base came up. And then they over-tightened and they destroyed value on the way down.
What's this? Again, I would like to see an actual Marxist talk about this. If we could. I don't know if there's anything. I think it's useful to see like what the different wings of the corporate press are saying about this. Again, you got like the reactionary wing in Fox News. You've got the more like establishment friendly wing and the CNBCs, etc. So it can be useful, I think, to pay attention to what each of these different political wings of that corporate media establishment are saying. But I would like to hear some actual socialists and Marxists weigh in on this as well. There's Michael Hudson's short written piece. But I don't want to read, though. I don't want to read. Ugh.
Let's bring in a couple of experts. Dan Primack is Axios business editor, and Duncan Davidson is a partner at Bullpen Capital. Welcome to you both. And Dan, there are people saying, I mean, geez, this was supposed to be kind of a mutually beneficial ecosystem here, and instead it was VCs turning on a bank. Nice. Some reports that they were getting their money out before telling their startups to get their own money out, and it was a really bad look all around, a lot of bad blood, and a lot of people furious with SVB over what they perceive to be terrible mismanagement here and pressuring them into bank relationships that now, in retrospect, left them fully exposed to its demise. What are you hearing?
Biden already gave a statement.
I mean, right. There's a lot of venture capitalists who told their portfolio companies to get their money out, and there's a lot of criticism of them from those who are supportive of SVB. One thing I'd say about that, though, is there's a sense of pragmatism here, right? If you're and so I'm a little sympathetic to the venture firms who on Thursday started telling their portfolio companies you might want to get your money out. Ultimately, venture capital's responsibility is to its companies, not to a bank. And now, granted, this bank has done a lot of good for Silicon Valley, and I think there are big questions about what its demise is going to mean for the future of startup formation. But if you've got payrolls next week, you're a portfolio company or you're a company with payrolls next week, the pragmatic thing was to at least diversify and make sure you were going to have cash. Remember, everyone who was freaked out on Saturday, those were the companies that didn't pull their money out. They were freaked out because they didn't pull it out. They could have had real problems. So there is an enormous amount of animosity and bad blood right now, but I'm kind of sympathetic to both points of view.
Duncan, have you ever seen anything like this before?
Well, I've seen other bank runs. I just say that all bank runs are unhappy in their own way. This one was so avoidable. I mean, my God, what a dumb thing to say in a CEO conversation. Don't panic. That's why everybody panics. Dan is exactly right. We had to tell all our companies, even though we knew it would lead to the contagion, that they got to protect themselves. Their money gets locked up. They can't make payroll. They go down. They go under. And it's a tragic situation. It's a prisoner's dilemma. And that's why the whole industry acted the way it acted.
Have you had to step up and put any of your personal capital here to help people make payroll, that sort of thing, Duncan?
We haven't been in that situation yet. We actually are fairly well protected in our portfolio, fingers crossed. But I think the bigger issue here is this. The speed with which they came into the market, the regulators, was actually too slow. We all remember It's a Wonderful Life. You got to go down to the bank, get your money out. You got time to stop a bank run. Right now, the regulators have no time, and they took even a few days was too slow for Silicon Valley. If they had asked ChatGPT, what do we do? They would have got a quicker answer than what they responded with. I do
Eventually,
think
we're just going to let ChatGPT make the decisions.
Not to put more paper trail on the banks, but to tell the regulators find a way to act more quickly. The internet, wiring, everything goes too fast.
But Duncan, they might turn to you and say you acted too quickly.
No, the problem was once everything cratered, what are you going to do? You have no way out of it. In other words, bank run is a human psychology problem. That isn't how you don't solve it by saying don't act like everybody else. You solve it by protecting the asset as quickly as you can.
When did you first get wind? Was it last week, or there have been a newsletter was writing about this in November? There was Jonathan Wild writing about it in the Wall Street Journal back then as well. When did you first get any inkling that this institution might have a problem?
Okay, so we got a Richard Wolff clip from this George Galloway
But
show.
for the moment,
The George Galloway show. George Galloway, who I think is kind of a dipshit in a number of ways, but at least he's having on Professor Richard Wolff to talk about this. So let's hear from that.
Professor, I'd like to begin by asking you the $64,000 question, though it's a lot more dollars than that. What happened to Silicon Valley Bank, and what does it mean for the rest of us?
Well, I wish I could say it was unique or special or rare. It's none of those things. It's a very common occurrence. The only amazing thing to most of us is that we as a society here in the United States permit this situation to continue. Let me explain. Banks many, many decades ago proved to the American people, as they have in your country and everywhere else, that they cannot be trusted with something as important as the money that makes the world go around. Since they are private capitalist enterprises, profit is their number one priority. Profit is their bottom line. They use the monetary system to make money. That's their priority. That means that they take risks. Here's the basic risk. They take in the money of depositors, individuals and businesses,
These are the people
paying as little as possible for that. They turn around and lend the depositors' money back to the depositors and businesses in the form of loans. They are proverbial middlemen, and they make their income by taking in as much as possible at the lowest rates and lending it out at the highest possible rates. All of that is very charming unless and until they get into difficulty. For example, the depositors want their money back. Well, they can't get it because it's been lent out. So we require banks to have their own capital so they can cover that kind of situation. The problem is that if ever a really large number of their depositors want the money back, and that's exactly what happened in Silicon Valley, California with that bank, then they are in difficulty. They have to liquidate their investments. But here's the problem. The investments of that bank were largely in government bonds. They lend to the government. Why? Because the government is in such difficulty here that it has to spend trillions of dollars more than it dares tax the population. So they borrow. So banks invest in those loans. Their bonds is what they're called. But they go up and down in value. So what has happened is that bank lost depositors, had to liquidate bonds at unfavorable prices. The rest of the banking world became aware of this because we don't regulate the banks properly, and then you had the collapse. It is a small version of what happened in 2008 and 9. And the great question this weekend, rattling New York City where I sit and the whole country, is how bad will this get? How long will this last? How many other banks are hiding the same situation that can no longer be hidden by the bank in Silicon Valley, which has, I assume you know.
That's another way of putting that. That's the question that's always on my mind when we start to see these signs. Is it happening? It does kind of feel like it's happening, but I've certainly been wrong before. Is it happening, or are they going to kick the can down the road again? And how fucking long can they kick this goddamn can? These are my questions.
Liquidated. It's out of existence. It's utterly bankrupt. This is a sign. No one should miss it. It comes 3 or 4 weeks after another failure of a private enterprise or of the government regulation to keep us safe. That was in the little town of East Palestine, Ohio, when a private profit railroad cut corners on safety, destroyed a community, thereby exposing that the government supposedly regulating them has been captured by those it's supposed to regulate, and so it doesn't do its job. But this has happened over and over.
Well, Dakadoon, seriously, I love how I get to live through all these failures, the .com, 2008, the pandemic, whatever this is. Like I was saying before, it's psychologically fucking difficult to be living in this system that constantly feels like we're living in this actual house of cards that at any moment can collapse. You know, this is messing with our heads to live like this. It really is. It's traumatizing all of us to live like this. And we got climate change. We got peak oil. I thought everyone hated Richard Wolff for the truckers thing. I mean, I don't hate him. I think his analysis can be beneficial in these moments. I think that was a bad take. He came out of that looking like an asshole, frankly. But I still think his analysis can be valuable in moments like this. I mean, same with George Galloway. George Galloway has said things that I think are important about, like the wars or whatever he's put on when it came to Iraq, when it comes to certain foreign policy things. He's also a huge loser in a number of other respects. So sometimes you can still find value in some of the things that they say.
An endless repetition of a fundamental flaw in our system. You cannot have the social welfare protected if the people charged with doing that have a private profit objective, which is a higher priority for them. That contradiction has never been faced and never been resolved, giving us an endless series of these kinds of breakdowns which will ramify and ripple across this country.
One of what you've just described so eloquently was featured in one of the most important books I read as a teenager, The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist. It was described by Owen, the hero of the book, as the great money trick. You take £1 from someone, you lend it 10 or 100 or 1,000 times, and you pay the man whose pound it is as little as possible, and you charge the people you've lent it to as much as possible. It is the great money trick that you have just described there, and yet it is fundamental to our economic system. Now, they laugh at people like you and me who say that our economic system is fundamentally rotten and must one day come tumbling down, and that we must be able to come up with a better one. In that sense, what's happened all over again would be good news, Professor, except that it's going to devastate perhaps thousands, maybe millions of people across the Western world over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And let me assure you, and those that
I don't really get why it's spreading at all if the government is guaranteeing every last deposit. Well, part of it, Pathogen, and again, I'm not a fucking financial expert either. I have a hard time understanding this myself. Part of it, though, is the fact that there are other banks as well that have this same problem. It's not just the Silicon Valley Bank. I'm trying to find the thing that I linked about this. I linked to what about this in the Discord, in the Finance Sickos. And by the way, I recommend if you joining the Finance Sickos Discord. The Finance Sickos town. Fuck. I'm trying to talk while look at the same time. The Finance Sickos channel in the TRRS Discord server. Okay? I was looking at the thing. I'm trying to find a link. I'm trying to talk at the same time. Don't give me a hard time. Join the Discord server and join the Finance Sickos channel in the Discord server. Okay? Do that. Here's what because I'm trying to find a link and trying to talk at the same time. I was trying to find this link from the Spectator Index saying Bloomberg reports the U.S. Treasury saying there are other institutions with similar problems. This is part of what the problem is. It's not just about SVP. It's not SVB. It's not just about that. It's also about a systemic problem in our economy that SVB might just be one of the first dominoes to fall. But this is like the problems that it was encountering are completely systemic to a lot of these different banks. That is my understanding anyways.
That are watching your program. This weekend, yesterday and today, all other business here in New York City, which is the economic
the
and
Fed is saying
financial
all kinds of stuff, but
capital
they're also
of the
trying
United
to,
States, if not.
Like if you see the line that the government's taking, like the keep believing in the system, right? They're trying to stop a panic. And the more people start panicking and moving their money out of these institutions, the worse the problem is going to get. So I think that's why you're getting from the administration and from the Fed, don't know, we're taking care of this. Don't worry. Everyone's going to be made whole. No one's lose faith in the system. No, that's the message coming from the Fed and from the Biden administration right now. So I think they're saying that for a very specific reason, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be fine. I think that's just what they're saying. It's like a tower of cards. If some of the cards fall over, it doesn't necessarily mean the whole thing collapses, but if the right set of cards collapses, it can knock over the whole tower. That's what they're desperately trying to avoid right now. Putin would want you to lose faith. That's right. You're giving Putin what he wants if you lose faith in this economic system. It won't be like last time, baby. Everyone will be made whole. No, that's an actual expression. Our economic system is so cucked, it can be startled into collapse by people's feelings. That's basically it. Yeah.
Of much of the world. All other business has been thrown away. There's a panic, an anxiety. The question is, how much money is the government going to need once again to bail out the private capitalist system when it flounders, when its contradictions catch up with it? How much other business will not be done? How serious will the efforts be? How many others are suffering already? How many bankers are running for the exits? Most of those questions will not be answered anytime soon. The terrible beginning of the stock market tomorrow morning is the deadline against which hysterical people, some of whom I know personally, are working in the government offices to save, once again, to save capitalism from itself, because that's their job, because they are Republicans and Democrats, and we haven't yet understood that we not only do we not have a loyal opposition, we don't have any opposition at all in terms of the power, which is why it is so disconnected from the realities that are now so frightening the United States.
Well, we may be two peoples divided by a common language, but we are entirely united by the fact we each have a unipolar parliament and government with no opposition at all. And yet, Professor, this very evening...
That sounds authoritarian.
Joe Biden and the White House tweeted that under President Biden, the economy,
thanks for the link, Johnny,
the American economy is headed in the right direction. Well, it looks to me like it's headed down an Ohio railroad to a crash.
It is genuinely, for me, embarrassing. I'll give you a personal glimpse. I was a graduate student at a university here in the United States, getting my PhD in economics. The university, I don't mind telling you, Yale University. A classmate of mine, a young woman, like I was a young man, her name was, Janet Yellen. She took the same courses from the same professors in the same room that I did. I know what she knows. I know she knows our economy is in among the worst periods of its life and its whole history. Let me be very quick with you. Our inflation is roaring ahead and no one knows how to stop it. The decision made by the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates compounds the problem because now middle income and poor people who can't afford to pay the rising prices are confronted with higher interest rates, which limit what they can do with their credit card, limit whether they can buy an automobile, block them from buying a home, with the ramifying economic consequences of all this. All that you have with Mr. Biden is the normal behavior of our politicians who, when they're in power, everything is going well, and when they're out of power, everything is being badly managed by the other side. No one pays attention. No one believes them. They intone this nonsense because they don't know what else to do. We weren't supposed to have an inflation. We were told it was all under control by, among others, Janet Yellen. Now we're told, well, it is everybody else's fault, and we're going to raise interest rates. We've been doing it very fast for the last 8 or 9 months, and it hasn't stopped our inflation. And it's a good sign we're about to go into a recession in this year, if we're not already in it.
Biden will be
Meanwhile, we're losing the war in Ukraine. I mean, the reality is this is a country that is more and more frightened by the sequence, the accumulation of bad news, of scary developments, of frightening possibilities, capped off when our leaders talk casually about the pros and cons of nuclear war. You really have a sense that we're all going off the rails here, and I don't mind telling you, watching yesterday when the Chinese broker a peace agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia,
this
for those
viewpoint should be
Americans
allowed
who
to be
pay
expressed in our
attention,
mainstream media.
not only are we in ever deeper difficulty,
If we actually had
but
a free
our
press, we would at
so-called
least hear this viewpoint.
adversaries are doing better and better, and achievement after achievement. Even our propaganda machines are unable to overcome the reality that leaks into our consciousness.
It's true.
And so I'm reporting to you from a country that is more and more feeling, and people say it to each other on the streets, everything is falling apart. What is happening? And they're looking for scapegoats. They are looking for magical solutions. They are hoping somehow this will straighten out. And yet the next one comes, and the next one comes, and the next one comes. It is an extraordinary period. Please don't be befuddled, anybody, by the comments of our political leaders. Between their self-serving and their out of touch with the rest of us, it is kind of a mysterious process of trying to figure out what they're doing through the fog of what they say.
Professor Wolf, you truly are the master. Thanks for that lesson for the students of the mother of all talk shows. Much.
Here's the link that our friend Johnny sent us. This live stream here with Steve Keen, which apparently is finance
just about everybody's perspectives on this, and then you provided your own. And so I'm curious, tell us, I guess, what is going on, first of all, just with the micro slice of the Silicon Valley Bank? What caused this? What is this all about? And then we'll go into what has happened since.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I had to say that Alf and Francis and Michael, to some degree, know more about the actual technicalities of the banking system than I do in the United States. And also they know about what's actually going on behind SVB. So both Alf and Francis would say quite cynical about the risk management practices of SVB. And and potential, is there fraud, is there misconduct, that sort of thing, where you can actually point the finger at the individual bank. What my perspective is that when you raise interest rate, you drop bond values. Banks, ever since the Glass-Steagall Act, when they separated banks from commercial banks from the speculative end of the banking sector, the merchant banks, banks are primarily required to have what they call safe assets. Reserves are the safest assets of all, of course, but they normally earn no income. So the one that banks actually almost have a responsibility to do is to buy bonds, government bonds. So what that means is putting up interest rates, which is supposed to control inflation, and that's the factor that the mainstream economists who run the Federal Reserve focus upon. They really don't understand the banking sector. They seem to ignore that as they push up interest rates, they push down the value of the assets, a major component of the assets of the banking sector. And that's what happened here, falling value worth of bonds. And they fall dramatically when you're starting from bonds, which, we're having face yields of 0.25%. As you increase the interest rate, you dramatically drop the value of the bonds. That means the assets of the banking sector fall. And one thing banks must maintain, in opposition to what the rest of us can do, they must have positive equity. So their financial assets must be greater than their financial liabilities. And for the SVB, because it had so many government bonds on its books, that wasn't the case. And that's what led the panic. And in this case,
Narrowpeat is the dump truck needed to clear the drain in the swamp.
SVB.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because obviously the concept of bailing out banks is very distasteful. Most of us have watched as our lives have fallen into the toilet. And so there's a bit of a rightful edge to us that doesn't want to see these banks bailed out when we have not been bailed out ourselves.
Yeah.
But within that, there's a much larger thing at play. I've seen folks such as Robert Hockett and even guys like Ron Gray who are saying, hey, listen, we want to insure deposits. We want to ensure that these things, this is not something we want to celebrate watching collapse. What we want to do is we want to force banks to actually do the proper risk management, to ensure the proper tools are in place to prevent collapse such as happened here. And everything they've done, quite frankly, from their lobbyists throughout, have been to, in fact, block any form of regulatory support, any form of legislation that would, in fact, keep them kind of smart and in between the lines. They like that Wild Wild West feeling. It's kind of got that whole shadow bank element to it. I'm curious, what do you see based on your understanding of the banking system as a whole? What do you see that is the primary thing that has caused these banks? And there's more that are going to happen. It's just a question of what Treasury and Fed and others will do once they happen. But what do you think is the primary cause of these collapses?
Oh, it's the one that Michael Hudson identified in his argument, and that is QE, quantitative easing.
I think I'll read that Michael Hudson piece after this, and then we can wrap up for the day.
And QE was the Federal Reserve's response to the financial crisis it didn't see coming back in 2007. And what it thought it could do is by what is actually involved is under quantitative easing, the Federal Reserve bought bonds off banks and non-bank financial institutions. When you buy the bonds, you drive up the prices of the bonds, and that's deliberate, and you drive down the interest rate as a result. So their belief was, and you can find Bernanke saying this, I say Bernanke won the stupid prize in economics last year. That's what you get the Nobel Prize for, being something which is stupid, but agreed to by neoclassical economists. So his stupid model of banking is that banks are intermediaries. Banks enable, Grumbine to lend to Keene, and when Grumbine lends to Keene, Grumbine's spending power goes down, Keene's goes up. When Keene repays, Keene's spending power goes down, Grumbine's goes up. Nothing really changes at the aggregate level. That's the way they think about banking. Completely wrong, because banks originate. Banks create debt and create money. If I borrow money from a bank, it has no effect on your deposit if you even deposit at the same bank. They're not lending out your deposit to me. They're creating an asset for themselves, which is the loan, and creating a liability for themselves, which is the deposit. That's how banks actually operate. Now, by ignoring the level of private debt, because they think it's an act between consenting adults. They don't think it has any effect on the overall economy. We've ballooned from levels of private debt back in the 1960s of the order of 60 and 70% of GDP to, in America's case, 170%. Quite up around the world, debt levels of 200% of GDP. That's what they should have been focusing upon. They ignored all that. They therefore didn't see the financial crisis coming. When it hit, they thought that they would boost the capacity of banks to lend, not realizing that bank lending has actually caused the problem. So what they thought was that they buy bonds. When they buy bonds, they therefore give the banks extra reserves, and they quite seriously think banks lend out reserves. Now, that is garbage. That is childish. That is somebody who's never done accounting to work out what the actual dynamics are. Banks do not lend reserves. The only way they can lend reserves is if all loans are in cash, okay? Which is not the real world. So they have a completely false model, but they thought by giving banks less bonds and more reserves, they'd lend more reserves, and that would kickstart the economy. Now, too much private debt actually caused the problem. It's the wrong thing to begin with. But when they did QE, by giving banks these excess reserves, the lending they thought would happen wouldn't happen. But what actually happened was when they bought those bonds off non-banks are allowed to buy shares. So they dived into the share market.
Hot dogs for lunch and dinner rule.
That's what gave us the asset price bubble.
It's not even that bad. It's actually pretty cool.
We had overvalued shares and, because of QE, overvalued bonds. Now, for banks, what that meant was the major asset they have on the two major asset reserves, which they can't, which were used for interbank operations and for the link with the government. They've got no role in lending. Reserves, loans, and bonds. They can't get many more loans out the road because we're all sick of borrowing, fundamentally. Loans are pretty much sort of flatlined for the last 15 years as a percentage of GDP. But bond holdings went up. And then, therefore, when they tried to reverse QE because of the fear of inflation, they put the interest rate up, and that drives bond values down. What that means is banks must maintain positive equity. Assets must be greater than liabilities. Plunging values of bonds means their assets are going to be below the value of liabilities. And once your liability exceeds your assets, you are bankrupt. And that's what they were pushing SVB towards. Some speculators saw that and got their money out in a hurry, the Peter Thiels of the world. But the fundamental cause was the Federal Reserve not knowing what the effort's doing and making another mistake on top of the original mistake, and therefore effectively bankrupting or breaching the stability of the financial sector when their primary role is to maintain the stability of the payment system.
I've got to move off this. I do have to go soon. I did want to take a look at this, though. This is funny. This is going to be funny. I think good rule of thumb is just to do whatever the opposite of Jim Cramer.
So I'm sitting here.
Whatever Jim Cramer says.
Segment was just a month ago. Let's take a listen.
Ninth best performer year to date is SVB Financial. Don't yawn. This company's a merchant bank with a deposit base that Wall Street had been mistakenly concerned about. SVB is the old Silicon Valley Bank. Recently bought one of our favorite research firms, Moffett-Nathanson, and it's become less dependent upon private equity and venture capitalist offerings.
This guy just always gets it.
Those dried up last year. They could come back. Yeah, some of them come back here, but the stock directly affects an oversold position. Stock was the fourth worst performer in 2022. I think the fears were not justified, and it's a very compelling situation. Hey, by the way, long-term private equity and venture capital, they're not going away. Being the banker to these immense pools of capital has always been a very good business. Stock's still cheap. Now, you have to remember that a stock that falls 66%, like SVB Financial did last year, it takes it a lot more to recover. After losing two-thirds of your value, you need a 200% gain to get back to even. This is arithmetic. Some people call it geometry. So you could argue SVB's nearly 40% rally this year is barely a drop in the bucket. And that's how I want you to think it. I think it's also a good example of why these bounce-back moves might be far from over. These stocks could have more room to run, especially if you think they were driven down to artificially low levels by tax loss selling, artificial dumping.
You almost can't make it up, people. It really.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. And you know, folks, I've been going 3 hours here. Haven't really mentioned this a lot. But, you know, I talked about this kind of sick satisfaction we get from seeing the line go down. Well, what if I tell you that there's another line that we want to see go up? And it's called the line of TRRS subscribers. Because, as you know, friends, as you know, I've not made this pitch the entire episode, by the way. I'm sitting here 3 hours I've got to at least point this out here. So if you enjoy this kind of content, folks, if me talking you through all this today and other days you have found beneficial to you, please support this channel by subscribing, gifting subs, gifting friend coin, tipping, subscribing to Patreon, whatever it is. We got to make the line go up at all costs. And, we can celebrate the overall line going down, but can't lose sight of the fact that there are certain lines that we want to see on a daily basis going up. And only a few generous chatters, folks, could get to the sub goal. Only a few generous chatters. Do you perhaps have an informative pamphlet or perhaps a video ad that tells you more about this? Let me see what I got here. I may have something for you. If you want to know whether you think this would be a good investment for you or not,
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I encourage you to watch this video.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
You don't want those suppressive persons in your life. Exactly. So that's the pitch, folks.
You can count on me, not a scam. Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm heading to the Chinese man milking factory. Y'all want anything?
God, that was so great this weekend. Thank you, Goat's Head, for the 16 months. And thank you also to Pry Bars for 6 gifted subs. I really appreciate... sorry. Pry Bars, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. And Ben and PS gifted a sub to Pry Bars as well. Thank you, Ben, for that. Thank you. Thank you, friends. That was so great with the whole Jordan Peterson thing. Although I had certain people, certain Judases in this community criticizing me and calling attention to the fact that I put in a small amount of research in order to accurately describe what this video was, because I don't want to spread misinformation. Because I don't want to spread misinformation, I did a small amount of research to accurately describe this video, and I had people in this community, even my own trusted lieutenants, mocking me over this. I'm not into that sort of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? Was the research looking at the metadata on your home computer copy of the video? No, it was not, because I don't have a copy of the video. Anyway, unlike our real economy, folks, investing in TRRS is not a scam. It's not a cult. It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not a scam. It's not a psyop, okay? And it helps me keep this content on the air. I was just gone a whole last week. I was just gone a whole week. right? I didn't bug you that whole time, except for that one day. It's not in my bookmarks bar either. I don't need to make a copy at all.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Friendship activated.
Thank you, CCC Reese, for the 17 months of Tier 1. Thank you. And folks, just 2 generous chatters. 2 generous chatters could get us over the line, could get the line to go up, the daily line. And wouldn't it feel good to invest in something that, because when you invest in one of these scam banks or the stock market, what do you get? You don't get anything. Most of the time you just lose. When you subscribe to this community, you get something tangible. You get something real, okay? Not only do you get the emotes, some of the best emotes that are even available on this channel, you get something better than that, though. You get access to a community. You get friendship. And that's worth more than money. Okay?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You must raise additional triangles.
Thank you, Ricky26K. Thank you for that. And everyone that subscribes to this channel or gift subs, of course, is my friend. Can your banker say that? Can your stockbroker tell you that? No. The cloud is unfortunately not insured and there are no refunds. But you don't need to insure friendship. Is it mortgage-backed clout? We're taking some of the lower clout members and we're packaging them up into a package, and then we're doing some clout credit default swaps for those. What you do with the clout is on you. That's right. It's just one big family, and that's what you're supporting. So can your banker tell you that? Can your stockbroker tell you that they're friends now? Not parasocial, by the way. Not parasocial. It's real. Okay? It's real. And folks, just a few generous chatters, could, in theory, get the line of TRRS to go up. We're seeing a lot of lines going down right now. That's beyond our control. That's beyond our control. We can control this line now. And unlike the actual economy,
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
this
talk
is not a
through all
scam. This is real. It's not on the verge of collapse either. In fact, many people are saying that TRRS is rising. Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Diego.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Goodness. The fundamentals of the triangle are strong. You just got to continue believing. You got to continue believing in the triangle. Here's 15 years ago.
Apple's up more than 6% right now. Google about 3%, but Dell, Intel, Research Motion, and Microsoft are all to the upside. Look how strong.
Did not disappoint. 400 points higher. Yes, indeed. The market's roar higher. Last 30 minutes of trading.
Some of the same people.
Volatility once again rules the day.
The same
Most
people.
of the techs this morning, if not all of them, have just exploded.
You simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you for not bugging us last week.
Thank you very much, G Clippy, for the 300 friend coin. Friend coin will never let you down. That's always going to be a rock solid investment. I guarantee it. No, it's not insured. But do you need insurance when you've got the personal guarantee of me? Right? Thank you, G Clippy.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Fart Party 69. Thank you very, very much, Fart Party 69, for the 5 gifted subs. Does the mother ensure her love for a child?
Rob
That's
to
right.
talk you through all this.
And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian, for the gifted sub as well. That's very kind of you. Thank you, everyone, for supporting this channel. Who knows how much longer I will be able to do this? I mean, I intend to keep going, but you never know. If their economy, if the tech bubble does pop, I may end up being caught in the middle of that. We'll see. But I really, really, really do appreciate everyone that supports this channel and supports this content and supports the work that I do here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Down 1.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
We're down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
2-year no yields went from 190 to 166 in the blink of an eye.
On the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely wiped out.
It
was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
From the financial
Is it
capital of the
happening
world,
again? This is the question.
the opening bell is going to ring in 5 seconds, and to be honest with you, we wish it wouldn't.
Traders here working the phone say a lot of their customers are freaked out, waiting to see how low the Dow will go.
I can't help but get excited, though. It's so sick. Right, Johnny? That's what I was saying. It's like we're all going to lose in this, right? Millions of people are going to have their lives destroyed inevitably when the system collapses again. But we have this sick impulse to be like, yes, yes. I don't know what it is. I'm rereading White Noise by Don DeLillo. I watched the film a couple of weeks ago, but I picked up the book again over the last week, and I'm reading that again. And it's a little bit about that as well, about the sick sense of satisfaction we get by watching these disasters unfold. The death drive, exactly. The death drive. That's exactly how it's described. Or talking about like being punished for their lifestyles. He talks about watching news coming in from California and seeing all the disasters as being a punishment for their lifestyles. And then, of course, you see the big disaster in the book be a punishment for their affluent, academic, consumer fetishizing lifestyles themselves. So it's the same kind of thing. It's like we want ourselves to be punished, don't we? We know we deserve it. We know we deserve it for our lifestyles. And the death drive that's inherent to this like economic system. The sick excitement we get from it. I did like the movie G. Cluppy. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but definitely enjoyed it. But I'm really enjoying the book a lot more. And by the way, this counts as one of my 5 books, right? I know it wasn't one of the 5 books that I indicated that I would read. It's not one of my like political nonfiction books, but I feel like it counts, and it's pertinent to what's going on right now. So I think it still counts as being one of my 5 books that I promised to read without being beaten up by the community members. Frankly, a lot of the world thinks we have it coming, and they're right. Of course we do. We absolutely do deserve it. For sure. So that's the thing. It's like we watch this. I'm watching these clips of 2008, and I'm getting that. It gives me that feeling of yes, yes. Just that I'm getting the same feeling right now. If we're wondering if we are in the early stages of something similar or worse, you know, who knows? We've been drinking everyone else's milkshake. That's right. And like I was saying, that's why those other countries are getting on board this de-dollarization process. They're all jumping ship. They see what's going on. But it's only our most subservient client states that are still on board. But they're going down with the ship. Like Canada's going down with the ship. It looks like Germany's going down with the ship. Who knows about whoever else?
Focused on the Dow, not so focused on OPEC. Yes, OPEC did cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day.
Really, you're seeing just broad-based declines across all of the major technology sectors. Apple's under pressure. Yahoo down 8.5%. Cisco 6.5%. Research in Motion 10%.
And we're not getting the bid wanted. We're not getting the stop trading, and we see where the buyers are. We're just every day they're pounding it.
The heightened.
Every day they're pounding it. I often am saying that as well. I'd be interested to see the statements from the Fed and from the federal government as well during these moments as well. I'm sure there's a lot of the same language. Don't worry, it's not a recession. It's not a collapse. Nobody panic. Everyone maintain the faith in the system. I imagine is a lot of the same language.
Financial turmoil that we have experienced of late may well lengthen the period of weak economic performance and further increase the risk to growth.
Can't look at it after you buy it because it's so horrible.
But we've had an 8-day losing streak in the Dow that in percentage terms puts it on par, close to the loss suffered in that crash in 1987, close to that percentage loss those 2 days in 1929.
What started in America last year has now spread to every part of the world.
We're down 9% today. The Xetra DAX over in Frankfurt is down by 9%. The Paris market down by 9%. Austria, which was briefly suspended earlier on in the day, is down by nearly 11%.
This market is as volatile as you'll ever see.
Traders saying this is the craziest day they have ever seen in these markets. Veteran traders saying they've never seen anything like it. The movement in oil prices so fast, so fast.
Seconds to go until the start of trading at the New York Stock Exchange, and stocks are set to kick off lower, a whole lot lower.
eBay is down 6.5%, and really you're seeing just broad-based declines across all of the major technology sectors. Apple's under pressure. Yahoo down 8.5%. Cisco.
Is it happening? It kind of feels like it is, isn't it? But who knows? Who knows? We'll keep covering this throughout the week. Again, we got the deprogram guys coming on Wednesday. I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about this stuff. We'll hopefully have Brian Becker. I'm going to work on bringing him on. I'll work on Professor Wolf as well. Over the next couple of weeks. We'll keep talking about this, obviously. It's already happened, and this is the beginning of the fallout. I'll get to your comment there as well, Ben. I moved to California 13 years ago from Yorkshire, England. I had feelings already, spent a bit of time here before. However, it's so much more fucked up than I could have imagined, mostly because it's the most propagandized country I've ever been within. Intelligent people are targeted more than most. Yeah, I mean, like I always say whenever that comes up, in Canada as well, I would give America the run for their money in terms of being heavily propagandized, but always projection when we talk about the victims of propaganda in other countries, or the victims of the susceptibility to brainwashing. Always projection. And the UK as well, absolutely. For sure. We'll keep covering this, and I got lots of great guests coming on to talk to us on the show. I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, friends? I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone, for supporting the stream. I appreciate it a lot. I'm going to get my goodbye music here. And that is all. That's it. Didn't get up much today. Got a bit of a sore rear end situation happening here. Very unfortunate stuff. For sure, Brian. And again, everyone follow our friend Brian, aka Lennon Smesh, as well as other elite streamers in the community, such as Subversive History, such as Unelectable Airwaves. On one of the evening streams, we'll give you a raid one of these days. Yeah, I will be on there. We'll figure out a time soon for that, Johnny. Okay? Also follow, of course, our elite mod, Lodane, who we love, who often does the pre-show of TRRS. And that's all. I'm going to go now, okay? I'm going to go give my regards to Left Flank Vets. I'll talk to you tomorrow.